Good evening and welcome to tonight's Board of Selectmen's meeting. Today is Tuesday, September the 24th, 2024. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are meeting this evening at the Harry Butters Selectmen's Chambers at Norwood Town Hall, 566 Washington Street in Norwood. And the meeting is also being broadcast by Norwood Community Media for future broadcast. Before we begin tonight's agenda, as is our tradition, we will call for the Pledge of Allegiance and for a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, just an introduction to tonight's agenda. It is a busy agenda this evening, including our regular business. We are going to have two appointments this evening. At 7 p.m., we have a public hearing regarding 929 Washington Street. At 7:45, we're having a meeting with representatives from the Community Preservation Committee concerning the 20 Vernon Street project. We have a variety of new business, as well as, we will be reviewing this evening and voting on the warrant for the special town meeting coming up on October the 24th. And we will also have a discussion and vote on the town meeting yellow sheets associated with the meeting warrant for October the 24th. We do have a few minutes before we begin our 7 p.m. appointment. If the board would allow me, I will suggest that we get right into new business until such time, right up to 7 o'clock. I think we have enough activity to get us through to that point in time. 3.1, meeting schedule for October. This is for discussion. So in October, the town meeting is on the 24th, which is a Thursday. Normally, sometimes when we do have a meeting schedule that includes a town meeting, we have some discussion around whether or not there are any advantages to changing the dates of our regular meetings, usually the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. This month in October, that would mean that we would meet on October the 8th, and we'd meet again on the 22nd of October, and then town meeting would convene on the 24th of October. My view is that I think that works out without adjustment to our schedule, but open for discussion for the other members if you feel differently.
I agree.
Okay. So no vote necessary. We will plan, Christine, on our regular meetings on the 8th and the 22nd of October. All right, 3.2. We're now into some approvals, some requests from citizens. 3.2 is a block party request from Vernon Street, submitting a request to hold a block party on Sunday, October the 13th, 2024, from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m., requesting that Vernon Street be blocked off from Prospect to Nickel Street. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the block party.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. And now we have 3.3. This is another block party. October must be the block party month. We have a block party at Windsor Road. This is submitting a request to hold a block party on Saturday, October the 5th, 2024, from 12 p.m. till 6 p.m. on Windsor Road, requesting that Windsor Road should be blocked off at the intersection of Dean and Edge Hill Road. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Item 3.4, street closure request, Hickory Road. Submitting request to close a small section of Hickory Road from the corner where Hickory Road meets Spruce by number 9. For 3 hours, that is from 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. on Thursday, October the 31st, 2024, requests and use of an established food truck, Son of Sam's, that would serve pizza to the neighborhood children. Do I have a motion on this request?
Motion approved.
And seconded by?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
does this require any kind of special insurance or anything in your, or maybe Bill?
We haven't required insurance, I assume when they say it's established, they're properly
Sure.
licensed through the state and everything. But we do have a regulation or a policy that they can't park on public streets unless
Okay.
the selectmen have approved it. So this helps.
So this kind of takes care of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mr. Mizuko, was there any further permits from the Board of Health or anything like that, since it's a food truck?
Food trucks do require them, some of them have them, this one
Okay.
will make sure that the Board of Health checks with them, sometimes they already have a permit to operate in town, they'll sort of get 6 or 7 different permits, then they don't need to get one each time, or if they never operate in town, it's a quick temporary permit, it's very easy to accomplish. We're approving the road closure, the liabilities on the host, if you will, for any liability as a result of that.
Okay.
Okay.
And they've done this before, it's no issue with them.
And like all of these, we notify the police and fire department of the closures.
Sounds good.
And if it's helpful to know, I'm familiar with that particular one, and they've been at other locations in town.
Yes. So it's been motioned and it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. We move on to item 3.5, Town Common Requests. This is a request from the Circle of Hope, submitting a request for the use of the Town Common and Dempsey Bandstand for the annual Luminary Night on Saturday, December the 7th, 2024, from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m., with reserved parking spaces along Washington Street. This request also includes the stuffers for the November light bills, as well as the placement of a sandwich board sign at the intersection of Washington and Manhattan Streets, and on the island at the intersection of Walpole and Washington Streets. Do I have a motion? Mr. Sad, motion, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Grow. Any discussion? Mr. Plasko.
It's a safer bet than betting on the Red Sox that it will be the coldest night of the year.
You know, I think we might be able to take the cold, but we just hope there isn't no rain. It's kind of hard to keep the candles lit with the rain coming. So this has been motioned and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That is unanimous as well. Moving on, item 3.6, another town common request. This is a request a submission of a request to use the town common on December 29th, 2024 for a menorah lighting ceremony from 6 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. and also to place a menorah on the town common from December 25th until January 3rd, 2025. Do I have a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Seconded by Mr. Sad. Any discussion? Well, you can tell we're getting close to the holidays when we're talking about the Circle of Hope and holiday events on the Common. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous as well. Okay, moving on to 3.7. Town Common Request, School of Rock. Submitting a request to use the Town Common for a live music showcase for students ages 7 to 17 on Sunday, October the 13th, 2024, from 12 p.m. until 5 p.m. with approximately 50 attendees expected. Just by way of background, board members, if you recall, this request came before us at our last meeting, and it resulted in a tied vote at 2-2. The School of Rock has submitted a second request for our consideration. So with that background, I will consider a motion.
I'll make, go ahead.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Plasko?
Not on the merits, I think we've talked about it enough, each one's opinion. Just want to say that typically, bringing back an item is only brought forward by a member who voted in favor. And then in the case of a tie, the prevailing side is those who voted in the negative. That being said, we don't have any really accepted parliamentary procedures, and generally parliamentarians like Robert's rules do allow items to come up at a separate meeting. I personally object to the idea that someone would come back with the exact same proposal, not a modified proposal if they were coming back a second time. But that's just me.
Fine. And I know that in our last discussion, and in previous discussions, we've also had some discussion about just some work that we need to do on looking at our policy regarding the use of town spaces such as the town commons. So at that point, I do have a motion to approve. Mr. Sad, yes,
Just for
sorry.
discussion, I guess I'm in somewhat the same camp Bill is. I don't have a problem with them using the common, but it's 5 hours.
Mhm.
And the last time I went down there, a lot of the seniors were complaining that when they go get ice cream at Daddy's Dairy, it's loud, like too loud for them. I mean, if we cut it back till 4 or 3:30, I think it'd be a whole lot better for the town and the seniors and people that use it. Maybe this group can do it a little earlier and to not take up the whole day in the afternoon. It's probably one of the last good afternoons in the fall for the seniors to go down there with ice cream, and I'm not sure you're affecting their business, but I don't know, it seems common sense, as Bill says, to don't take up the whole afternoon, and if they were gonna do it, maybe go to the Civic later, I don't know, inside, it's up, if it had rain, I don't know, but just throwing it out there.
Sure. I guess my suggestion would be, we have talked previously about just reviewing our use of town spaces policy, and perhaps as we go through that work, we consider those insights in terms of the time, the length that the common can be used. And but in this particular one, they have requested this before, and we've approved it, and I think lacking the rigor of a new policy review. But I take your point, and I think that
Yep,
should be in
that's fine.
consideration as we go down the line. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. Maybe this is a question for Mr. Mizuko, and we probably don't have something like, are we able to ever measure decibel levels or anything like that on the common?
We could. I think the challenge would be that, what are we gonna do, set a decibel level for certain concerts? When
Right.
the town itself holds a dozen concerts a year there, and it was the town that closed the entire center and had the Boston Pops come and
Right.
play for $300,000. I think you'd be running into the risk of, if it's obnoxious, and we've received complaints before about different events, not about this event, which we just, by the way, the board just approved the same event in June, so it was recently. I know at the
Right.
last meeting I had said, we've done it before, it was just in June they did the same.
Yeah, I'm
event.
just thinking, I know that, for instance,
the
Mr.
problem-
Mulvihill's band probably would.
Loudest.
might exceed that decibel level. The other problem is the reality of the enforcement of that, of
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday events, and what are we going to do? Have the building inspector run out there with the decibel meter, and
Right.
just relatively unreasonable. Again, this is youth. If it wasn't youth focused, I could see a different concern, but it's a youth music showcase, so. For a business that's owned by folks that live in Norwood, the business is in South Norwood.
Yeah, and I know that they've done things like in bars and stuff like that, and I think this is probably a more appropriate venue, so that's why I would vote in favor of it, and that they've already, shown that they can be responsible with having these events there. But Mr. Sad's point is well taken for sure.
Okay, that was a very good discussion, and I think we have some direction going forward, but for the purposes of this evening, we have a motion to approve that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye?
All opposed?
Opposed?
3-2, carried. Moving into item 3.8, we have about 12 minutes before, no, more like 15 minutes. Compost action 3.8. The letter is in your package. This is from an organization, New England Zero Waste, proposing some clean water action. Basically are encouraging communities to sign on to a letter that they developed to the governor, to the state of, to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, encouraging the Commonwealth to support municipalities with increased funding, resources, regulatory support, and other activities associated with zero waste, or diverting food waste, if you will, into other waste streams besides waste management. Mr. Plasko, I'm sorry, I'm at the end here. You also asked for some information on our own compost program. At the end of this discussion, I'll move into that. I did hear from Mr. Collins, who supports the Sustainability Commission, and they have received this as well, and have also put in the 2 cents that they support, are supporting the letter to Governor Healy as submitted. Any discussion on this? Mr. Lane?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think this is great. It's pretty timely for what we've been trying to do as a community in terms of reducing our food waste. And I probably literally just finished this packet on this. What was, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on your takeaway of sort of next steps for Norwood potentially after, and maybe this ties into what Mr. Plasko was asking about, our own program, our composting program.
Yeah, well, that's, if you don't mind, I can speak to that at this point. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I thought there were advantages for the town to authorize the chair to sign on to this letter, given that we are now a community that is dealing with the issue in terms of what are the things that we can do to divert food waste, in particular from the waste stream. And our compost program is one of the ways that we've done that. If you recall, in November of 2023, we approved the funding for a food compost pilot program, which we began after the first of the year. So let me just give you some highlights in terms of how that program is going. That program period is designed to run from May of this past year through June of next year. The program began pickup in Norwood of May of this year with a goal to retain at least 500 participants in the program. Enrollment in the plan began in February, and by mid-March, 250 residents had signed up for the program. By April 27, we hit the 500 mark, which allowed us to qualify for Black Earth's volume discount rate of $2.71 per week for each participant. Now that is in contrast to the private pickup rate, which is $4.42 if you were a private customer. Currently, we have 650 participants in the pilot. The appropriation provided at the November special town meeting is more than sufficient to cover the cost of the weekly pickup through the end of the pilot on June 30th. I did coordinate with Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Rosen to get that assurance that our fall of November, our appropriation is sufficient to cover the remainder of the pilot, actually then some. So Mark Ryan, Mr. Ryan, our DPW director, has worked with Black Earth and the LaRusso plant on Pleasant Street to organize a process for Black Earth, that's our provider, to estimate Norwood's food compost rate. So on a monthly basis, one of the days that it's Tuesday when Black Earth is here on site collecting the compost from the participants, Mr. Ryan has been very helpful with arranging with LaRusso Paving for the trucks to be weighed. So we can actually have some really good information regarding how much food waste is going into compost, and at least theoretically speaking, is not going into our waste management stream. So just to give you some idea, as an update, weights obtained in August and September collected from Norwood participants range from 3,780 pounds, that's about 1.89 tons, to 4,700 pounds, which is about 2.35 tons. So you can see that tonnage at this point is tonnage that's not going into our waste stream, and that's something that I think is beneficial to the program. And we will continue that monthly weighting on the food composting. I wonder if we can just tell the people outside to just
I'll let
be
them know
quiet a
once
little
again.
bit. It is a little distracting. Yes, so the weights, so we have the weights, we'll continue to do it on a monthly basis. We have a project team, it's myself, it's Mr. Ryan, it's Mr. Rosen, that work with the Black Earth group and also with the Sustainability Committee to assess the programs and its value to Norwood. We're going to assess the program pilot in 2025 to determine options for continuing Norwood's food composting program. There's a number of options we can consider. What some towns do, if it's not receiving a municipal contribution for composting, what some towns have achieved is the ability to retain that volume discounted rate for the amount of subscribers who would remain with Black Earth if the town subsidies ended. Preferred vendor rate is something that a lot of towns do take advantage of. That's, would still give us advantages for the participant to continue to participate as a member of Black Earth at a discounted rate. But those things I think we need to do in early 2025. By that time, we'll have more detail in terms of how our weighing goes and so forth and so on.
That's great.
Probably more information you asked for, Mr. Lane, I'm sure.
I think it's really important and it's timely for sure. And I know that I've been really happy with the program and as one of the 650 participants. So it's been great. And this was an interesting paper because it sounds like there's a big push at the State House level to try to work on this too. So I'd be interested, if, Ms. Groh, if there were conversations in the future and that we can be a part of it.
Yeah, we can absolutely.
I mean, one of the things, that we did take advantage of in this program was Mr. Ryan was able to get a grant to help support the purchase of the containers, the compost containers, which reduced our, we didn't have to spend money from our own town meeting appropriation for up, I think it was like $10,500.
Nice.
So that kind of initiative, those kinds of programs, I think a letter like this would be very helpful to continue to have the Commonwealth hear from the communities, and towns like us certainly, I think, could use further support in managing the ways and means that we can reduce the amount that's going into our trash stream. $285 for every ton that goes into the trash stream, and rising, and it seems to be rising with no end in sight. So we need to take some proactive measures to do what we can to keep the tonnage down.
Right, and definitely some of the landfills that are closing or scheduled to close in Massachusetts is just going to get more expensive, I would imagine.
Ms. Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things people kind of forget about is they often are like, oh, well, you can just burn it and the problem's solved. But people forget that even if you burn waste, you end up with the bottom ash that still has to be disposed of. Like if you think of burning a campfire, it's not just gone, there's ash at the end. And mind you, it's less volume than the logs, but it still has to be put somewhere. And that's a big part of the problem is we're even running out of room to put that ash. So it's really important for us to deflect a lot of this stuff out of the stream as much as we can.
So you need a motion to...
Any other, yes, I guess I need a motion unless, just to authorize the chair. I suppose as the chair, I probably have the authority to just...
Authorize and direct the chair to sign the draft letter.
Mr. Lane seconds. Thank you. All in favor?
On that motion?
Yes, Mr. Plasko.
We continued this from the last meeting at my request, and I thank you for that. I was actually able to finally read all this and get more educated than I have been on the subject. But most importantly was the letter we're now authorizing you to sign. Want to make sure there wasn't anything in there that maybe was too far out that we didn't want to have sent in without being aware of. Had time to concentrate on that and am prepared to offer that motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Lane. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, board members. I think we have,
A few more.
when we have time for another discussion, another item for signature by the board. Just allow me a moment to get myself organized here. This is item 3.9. This is a mortgage discharge for 20 Mylod Street. It's for signature of the board. Mr. Mizuko, we've seen this before, but perhaps you can just give us a refresher on the purpose of a mortgage discharge.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At any point in time, if we had CDBG housing rehab or any other federal funds that pass through the town for housing work or housing rehab, there's a lien placed on that property that we then need to vote to remove once the timeline has completed. In this case, it has.
Motion to approve.
Yeah.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Plasko. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is unanimous. Why don't we move to one more late agenda item, and then I think we'll be on time. Let me just get my paperwork here. So this, I suggest, board, if we can take a look at item 3.14. This is a late agenda, a late agenda item. This is a bench donation for acceptance by the board. The Neponset Valley Sunrise Rotary Club submitting a donation in the amount of $1,400 towards the purchase and installation of a memorial bench in memory of former club president David Hajar. Yes, and the general manager has prepared a staff memo to that effect at all. This is the bench donation. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Seconded. Any discussion on the bench donation?
The only relevant point I'll add is the proposed location will be one of the bench spaces at the Stearns Alley Park, Pocket Park, which I think some board members will remember that Mr. Hajar was particularly passionate about that project, so now there will be a bench there with his name on it.
I think that's entirely appropriate. He worked very hard on that project, and it turned into a overgrown, tree-lined spat of land into a nice neighborhood park. So, yes, Mr.
On the
Sack.
motion, maybe just a letter of gratitude and thank you to the Neponset Valley Rotary Club.
Okay, we will add that. I don't think we need that. We'll add it to the motion then, if a friendly amendment will be accepted.
Perfect.
For acceptance by the board with Mr. Sad's notation to thank the Neponset Valley Sunrise Club. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great. We have 3 minutes. I think,
Point of order.
yes.
What about the regular warrant signature? as opposed
Oh,
to-
Ms. Grow, that is brilliant. How did I skip that? I went right by that. Thank you. This is our usual item number 1, warrant signature update. Submitting notification of reviewed and approved warrant signed by the board's representative.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by Mr. Lane. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is unanimous. The time is now 6:58. I think what we'll do, gentlemen, take a seat. We'll take a moment or two for you to get settled, and then we'll start the meeting promptly in about 1 minute, as it is 6:58. You can read the notice, sir.
Election.
Oh, yeah.
Got time for that?
Yeah. Before we begin, one more item of business that will take us right to 7 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Plasko. So we've been asked by the town clerk to read an early voting process notice. This is from Mary Lou Folin, our town clerk, for acceptance and approval by the board. I shall read the memorandum to us. Dear members of the board, this letter is being written in reference to the early voting process that will be held in the town of Norwood for the upcoming state presidential election. We have been notified by the Secretary of State's office that there will be a 2-week early voting period for the upcoming November 5th, 2024 state presidential election. Early voting will begin on Saturday, October 19, 2024, and will end on Friday, November 1st, 2024. The early voting will take place in Memorial Hall, first floor at Town Hall. The hours are as follows. Saturday, October 19, 2024, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday, October 21st, Friday through Friday, October 25th, 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Saturday, October 26th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And a notation here from the town clerk is that day, October the 26th, is also the last day to register to vote for the state presidential election. That is, October 26th is the last date. And finally, Monday, October 28th through Thursday, October 31st, 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And Friday, November 1st, 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact the town clerk's office at 781-762-1240, extension 6026, or email clerk@norwood.ma.gov. So with that, I'll accept a motion to accept an approval by the board.
So moved. It was a literal tie.
We'll go Ms. Grow
Yeah.
and Mr. Lane seconds.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right. All right, so we are now going to proceed into the public hearing on 923 to 929 Washington Street. At this time, I will ask Ms. Woodward if you would kindly read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Norwood will hold a public hearing on September 24th, 2024, at 7 p.m. on the request of 923-925 Washington Street LLC, with respect to property located at 923-925 and 929 Washington Street, Map 3, Block 6D, Lots 20 and 21, Norwood, Mass. 02062. In the General Business Zoning District. The hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Chambers at the Norwood Town Hall, 566 Washington Street, Norwood, Mass. 02062. This application requests local initiative program approval to pursue a comprehensive permit with the Town of Norwood under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, Sections 20-23, to allow the construction of a 32-unit multifamily residential building on the subject property at 923-929 Washington Street, with at least 25% of the units maintained as affordable to households below 80% of the area median income. Interested persons are encouraged to attend the hearing and make their views known to the board. Plans are on file with this application in the office of the Board of Selectmen. It may be requested by emailing selectmen@norwoodma.gov, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. Mel, if you would if there's anyone, we do have several chairs in the chambers. If there's anyone in the hall that wishes to come in and sit, would you welcome them in here? We have at least, yeah. Yeah, we can't accommodate everybody. We can get some folks. We don't have enough room for everybody, but you're welcome to fill in the chairs in the back of the room.
How many are out there, do we know?
Right in there.
If we need to, we can pull the table a teeny bit forward. Stevie, a little bit more. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Here's one more chair here. Someone can pull it over there if they want. Thank you, Mel. Just kind of review the process for the public comment. You can chime in with your, if I missed anything, let me know. Okay, good evening, everyone. Before we begin the presentation from the folks, the the proposers. Just a few reminders regarding the public hearing and how we're going to go forward. So this is a public hearing. We're here to hear the presentation from the developers sitting at this table here. At that time, during that process, the members of the Select Board, at the end of the presentation, will offer any commentary and questions they have. At some point during, once those questions are exhausted, I will ask if there's any public commentary that a person wants to make in regards to the development. And I ask you to raise your hand and then just identify yourself, and you will make your comment. That's how it works. If you want to be recognized, raise your hand and you'll have the floor. This isn't a hearing where questions are going to be popped in from the hallway. You have to be recognized in order to speak. At some point, once we have exhausted all that question period, we'll see where we are. This agenda this evening is a busy one. We do have a 7:45 appointment. It's quite possible that at the end, as we approach 7:45, if we are continuing to field questions from the Select Board or from members of the public, we may need to have a decision to continue the hearing at another time and date and location to be determined, all right? Is everybody clear? Thank you very much for coming here. At this point, what I'd like to do is, gentlemen, if you could introduce yourselves, and I know you have a presentation that's up on the screen, and you're welcome to, the floor is now yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Phil Mackey, 1256 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts. It's counsel for, and on behalf of the applicant, with me is Pat Corrigan, the principal of Corrigan Development, and 929 Washington Street, LLC. I'm actually the new guy here on this project, as they had a previous counsel, but he was no longer able to continue. So having said that, I do know that we have gone, or this team has gone in depth with this board on this project. So I will, because I think there's a bunch of new faces here, summarize for you where we started, where we're going. Pat has a few things to say about the neighborhood outreach, and apparently we're going to get a lot of neighbors' comments as well. So with your permission, I don't know, are you moving the slides, or how do I have that auspicious duty. Oh, Tony gets to. All right, so Tony, if you would be so kind. So basically, for anyone who's not familiar, this is the dilapidated building basically next to Honeydew Donuts and that locus. As was mentioned in the notice, it's actually 3 lots between 923 and 929 Washington Street. It is within 0.3 miles of the hospital, just over half a mile from the center. The nearest commuter rail is about a 9-minute walk. Moderna's campus is about an 8-minute drive. So you can kind of see from what I'm proposing, our anticipated residential mix is going to be largely walking, using commuter rail, working in the hospital. I know Moderna's always looked, well, if the hospital ever gets built, that's a good one. Clearly, as Moderna continues to expand, I know for a fact they're always looking for places in Norwood so that they don't have to drive very far to work. That said, this is not, as far as I know, part of the MBTA overlay, and this is not being put forward under that. So it's kind of a procedural thing, more for the audience than for yourself. While we are seeking a comprehensive permit to allow multifamily housing in a district that normally is not allowed in, this is not what people consider a 40B. We can't force it. We can't make the town do anything. We are here asking, I won't say quite hat in hand, but we are here proposing a partnership with the town of Norwood to make this development. And if you see fit to vote, this will end up in front of the zoning board, where further details will be hashed out and hopefully the permit granted. But this is not a slam dunk. We can't, mainly because I hear people say this all the time, oh my God, it's 40B. Why are they doing this to us? They aren't doing anything. We are here asking to work with you, with the town of Norwood, with the neighbors, to come up with a good project. Good, of course, is a subjective opinion, And I'm hoping, as we move forward, we will come to a project that everyone agrees is good. Tony, if you wouldn't mind. So basically, maybe not the best screenshot, but that's about half of the site. We don't need to dwell on it too much. Please advance one more. That basically just shows you the location where I described. We're kind of in the upper left-hand quadrant. You can see with the center and the hospital areas. And again, we can go forward. That's a fairly good shot, and you can just leave it at this one. I think I can do most of my talking off of this slide. So basically, you can see in the middle our site. We've got a building that has a tarp over the roof, holes in other parts of the roof, something that looks kind of like a haunted house at this point. And on one side, we have a fairly nice, I shouldn't say fairly, we have a nice business, and we have Honeydew Donuts, again, nice business, and a nice residential neighborhood in the back. So, for better or worse, this is not the crown jewel of the neighborhood right now. And what Ms. Corrigan would like to do, and it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see down below, yeah, there you go, is replace all of the dilapidated buildings with a new modern apartment building. When we were here before, it was proposed that we had upwards of 40 units, 4 stories all the way around, and it was a fairly large building. We have since revised downward the project to 32 units. You can see the breakdown there. 5 one-bedroom, 21 two-beds, 6 3. 8 affordable units, that's 25%. 43 parking space, 2 ADA units. We are currently proposing a roof garden and community space. I've already heard today that some of the neighbors don't want a roof garden. So that is one of those items that certainly would be up for discussion as this moves forward. Hopefully. So basically, it is the project that was presented before. We have cut down the height at the street, so it's a little bit hard to tell, but basically the streetscape is in line with the building immediately to the left as far as the roof height goes. The peak of that building is roughly the same height as the front part of the building. It does step up as you get further back from Washington Street. But again, I would submit, everybody else knows, everyone here knows what the mill buildings, the old mill buildings, the storage areas, et cetera, in the area are. And I guess, Tony, we can flip through the rest fairly rapidly. It's basically the overall or top-down look. You can see that there's some green space such as can be provided. Most of the parking is in the back. There's one entrance and egress out to Washington Street. We can move forward. And that's basically the project as it stands now. We can certainly answer further questions, and I do want to turn it over to Pat to talk a little bit about his outreach and what he's done. And then I realized that I'm going to tell you that we've talked to the fire department, building department, and Norwood Power, and have nothing to back that up other than these 3 emails that I need to distribute to you. Basically, since we were here before, your board has some concerns. We did discuss this project at length and make some changes with it. These are just the 3 emails. Thank you. One for you. From the departments. We have one from the building inspector saying he has no issues and wishes us well as the permitting process. We have one from the fire department that basically says all of the concerns that were addressed or brought up during the initial meeting have been addressed. And then one from the Norwood Light saying that there is sufficient capacity, and once the electrical design is actually designed, they will work with us to figure out transformers and the mechanisms of getting electricity into the building. So we have, since we saw you last, spent some significant time with the professional staff here working out the concerns. And again, this is a preliminary plan, so should you see fit to vote affirmatively. As we work through this with the zoning board, the plans will be more refined, and we will continue to work with the various departments so that we have, and I'm going to use it again, a good project. And Pat, I'll just turn it over to you to talk about the outreach that you've done between then and now.
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks everyone for listening to us here tonight and having us at the meeting. But we have spent a lot of time on this project. Unfortunately, we had to reduce the number of units because of the concerns by the planning board and different boards in the town and the neighbours. We met with all the neighbours and explained to them how we got to this stage, and we went to the different boards in the town and talked about the stormwater capacity, then the drainage and the design, and the electrical services, how we were going to put a transformer in to supply this so it doesn't affect any other part of the town. And we cut down the front of it, like Phil said, to accommodate the skyline. So at this stage, we felt that the neighbours' meeting was very successful. I felt like everybody left happier than they came in to the meeting, and I want to thank the guys at the supermarket for hosting it. And so that's it. We are where we are, and to move forward, we'd like to hear what people have to say and work with them.
Open up for any questions or comments from the board. Mr. Sack.
I'll go first. I got a couple major concerns with, one, the building, the size, the shape, the height. But I have a question. If you were to put this with the two-family in Ambrose Press, how many lots or how many units could you get by right?
I'm not sure. I can find out.
10, 12?
Not even.
No, I'm just, yeah, okay. That's a big unit. Now, parking spaces, you need, I think, looking at the print that I'm familiar with, 3 parking spots per 2 and 3 unit, and 1 for a 1-bedroom. So you need 86 parking spots,
Right.
and you only got 46, I think it was.
Correct.
And then you got a
43, yeah.
snowstorm, and where's the snow gonna go? You gotta push it up the hill.
We actually have a. Yeah.
Okay, the building's way too tall. The people in this neighborhood, they're not gonna be able to see the sun anymore. Not fair to them. The units, the electric pad, I think we should know where that is, for future meetings on the site of where you're gonna have this unit. I just think you're asking a big ask for the town of Norwood to put this monster building up in a neighborhood that's, if you put the screen back of everybody else's 2 and 3 units behind you and around you, you're putting in, it's like a junior hospital in there. That's John Kennelly's old building on the left, the Norwood Tool. It's massive. I mean, they would never let you put this in Medfield, Westwood, Dover, in a spot that's a residential zone right tight to this neighborhood like this one. So unless you retweak it, I'm not happy with it. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Plasko.
Thank you.
I would appreciate it if we don't, it's not a sporting event, so if we can just keep the clapping out of it, please.
You can cheer for my golf team, though. We won tonight.
Save it for the golf game.
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple other similar LIP programs in town, but they happened over years ago, and we don't really have a set procedure for how to handle these, this one that's now before us, or any that may come after. And I think, we should work on getting that done. It's pretty simple, but probably should be written down so everybody can know just what it is, including the applicants. From my perspective, we have maybe 3 steps to start with. The first one is the applicant telling the town they're interested in coming, which they've done. And the second one is for them to, and that's happened informally, and then to formally, you're here tonight, and did it include public input, which we're here to do. We've posted this. There is no requirement for public posting or anything, but of course, we felt that's right and have done that. Notified people within 300 feet of the project by mail, and advertised it as well. So we're having that public input's part of it. The third part, as far as I'm concerned, is to then have the board take it all into consideration, considering the number of details that might be involved, and decide whether they want to approve it as submitted, offer you alternatives that would be acceptable to the board, to then issue you a letter of support, and if you could find those acceptable, to want to go ahead and with the project at the site, or to turn it down. But those may come even after the third step. The third step is for us to digest everything we hear, review, discuss among ourselves whether we like it 100% or we like it except for this and that, and how can we be satisfied and so forth. So I think that's how we should be proceeding this evening, for my 2 cents on that. For people that don't know, we're discussing a LIP program, which is commonly referred to as a friendly 40B. It follows the comprehensive permit law, which is also commonly referred to as 40B, except for, as Attorney Mackey mentioned earlier, not forced down the town. It's totally cooperative. We work together. It's designed to allow the municipality to be engaged in the development of the project right from the beginning. So that's where we are. I do have a lot of questions. I don't even know if I can get to them tonight. But I am concerned, some of the things that Mr. Sad just mentioned, density, it really started off in the 40s, 42 or whatever the number was. And we told them that really was a little bit more. We wanted to bring it down. They came in and they showed us informally meeting that, you know, now they have a plan, which is really the same plan you have tonight, 32 units. And at least one member, myself, said you got to do better than that. That has to come down more. And please meet with the neighbors, which I believe you did. So thank you for that. You know, I look at the pastures in Dover that you just opened. It's beautiful. But the density is so much different than Norwood. Why people, when they come to Norwood, need to have it so dense. You people knew when you bought this property what you could do with it, and you bought it. And this is so much more than that. And asking for a little more, extraordinary cost to build, tear down that old Ambrose Press building, as people haven't been inside it. It's going to be a project to take that down, and so forth. I can understand and try to work with you. But all that said, I still think you're asking for too much. I don't think it blends with the neighborhood. I don't think there's any justification for it. I don't think the cost can possibly be required. So I think it goes beyond just what's necessary. So enough on that point, at the moment at least. You mentioned, Attorney Mackey, that, you know, down the road there'd be further details worked out with the zoning board, and that's true. If we approve it, application, a joint application, goes into the state. State does their review of certain aspects. They approve it. They issue a letter that you would be eligibility letter for a comprehensive permit. And technically, the zoning board themselves issues that that comprehensive permit. And that's when you'd work out details. But more details than what this presentation shows, at least from my vote, my perspective, this seat wants more, because you're asking me to endorse it. I want to know what I'm endorsing. I want to know that it's not going to change from the day I endorse it to the end when it's built. So there will need to be some more work on that. I already mentioned the 32 units. Met with some department heads, got some letters. They are actually fairly vague. And I noticed one in particular that I'd be concerned about is there isn't one from the police department. I think one of the things we are always concerned with is traffic. Is it an issue or is it a non-issue? But it's got to be addressed. The very start of that would be talking with the police department and then decided later whether actually needs studies or not. But, so some things are still missing there that I would want further information on. So without spending a lot of time getting into particulars in this evening, Mr. Chairman, particularly with the crowd here that presumably wants to speak, I'll hold any further comments till later.
Mr. Lane?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to take the same position. I think we should take advantage of the fact that there are so many people here. I'm assuming a lot of them want to speak, so, and I don't feel like we would probably get to a decision this evening, so I'll reserve comment. You know, I do recognize that the previous time you came in front of us, you have reduced the units. I think that's good. You know, some of the things that I'm concerned about is that top floor, the fourth floor. You know, I don't really like it. And then as Mr. Plasko said, you know, that location is not a great one, and I, you know, having lived on Chapel Street for about 10 years, you know, that turn there and that island, it's just, there's a lot going on there, and so I'm concerned with the number of cars, and I had spoken about this previously, so I'm sure maybe that concern is also shared by some individuals in the room. But again, I think I'll reserve sort of the finer details until later. So, but I do appreciate the outreach. I know that this has been a process, and you haven't just tried to bulldoze your way in here, and so I respect that.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually don't have further questions for you. I think you've presented as much detail as I would be interested in. And continuing to get the communications. Like Mr. Plasko said, it's going to be a process of continued engagement. But I am very interested in hearing, you know, feedback from the public on it before I would be committed to making any kind of decisions tonight. So, no further questions.
Thank you. Just a moment from commentary from me, then we'll open up to the public. So, Mr. Sad had some very good questions there, and one of the comments I had coming into this meeting was that the issues that Mr. Sad brought forward in terms of the parking, the height and density are matters that you would be specifically addressing with the ZBA somewhere down the line. So I'm not sure where I stand on who comes first here, the ZBA or us. I kind of think, in my opinion, it probably is a good route to get the ZBA process going first, but be that as it may, we are first. I also had made a comment at January when you were last in here that, you know, personally, and I agree with everything everybody said. I think we have some more work to do, and we'll find out from the as much as we can, the public input from this evening, is that I don't know how many lit processes Mr. Sad, myself, and Ms. Grove have gone through. We're relative to the three almost rookies on the board, so to speak. And I also thought that as we go down the line further, that would probably make sense for the board to get more of an orientation of the lit process itself. And that might require Mr. Mizuko and Ms. Dixon coming before us to go through a sort of a tutorial or lit 101 with us. But I don't have any specific comments. I think those issues of the zoning relief you're looking at are certainly key to the development proposal as it is, but they've been laid on the table already. And at this point, before I do open it up for public comment, I do have received very brief emails and letters. If you don't mind, I'm going to read them all into the record, and then we'll proceed to public comment. Mr. Plasko, you will remind me if I'm doing something erroneously here, being a veteran member.
Close enough.
Good enough. This first email is from Doris Dixon, resident Doris Dixon, Select Board. Please read and enter into the meeting minutes for the meeting relative to the proposed build on Washington Street abutting Mr. Franks. I'm not opposed to housing. I am opposed to more rentals because we need affordable ownership options, not $700,000 townhouses or $3,500 rentals. I'm also opposed to anything taller than the condos on the other side of Mr. Franks, so 3 stories, and to the exterior finishes, aesthetics of the proposed project. it will stand out like a sore, ugly thumb. We also need to stop causing flooding with building, eating up grass and trees. Is there really any consideration given to the ZBA meetings to stormwater? Yet the town wants to spend how much on this issue? The favorite comment is no environmental damage with this project. Yes, there is. So if we have a say in this project as it's currently offered, please say no. Thank you, Doris Dixon, town meeting member, District 1. Next one is, don't have a name on this particular email. It is proposed complex. I wish to voice concern about the proposed complex at 923 Washington Street. This is a bad idea. The traffic pattern in the area is already stressed. At peak times, I witnessed multiple problems where Washington Street intersects with Chapel Street already. Without significant changes to the traffic flow, I believe additional foot and vehicular traffic could prove dangerous for existing and any potential new residents. Again, do not know the name of that writer. This is from Olin Hughes, resident Olin Hughes. Dear members of the Board of Selectmen, I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to formally express my opposition to the proposed 32-unit apartment development at 929 Washington Street. While I understand the importance of affordable housing, I believe this particular development will have significant negative impact on our community. The scale and density of the 32-unit project at this location are inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood and will likely lead to increased traffic strain on public services, potential environmental concerns. I understand there is a Board of Selectmen meeting this evening. I respectfully request that my opinion be read aloud at the meeting. I believe it is important for these concerns to be part of the public discussion before any decisions are made. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I look forward to hearing more about how the town plans to address these concerns. Sincerely, Olin Hughes. And the last one is from David Haglin. Dear members of the Board of Selectmen, I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to formally express my opposition to the proposed 32-unit apartment development at 929 Washington Street. Thank you, David Haglin. So at this point, that is all the written commentary I have from on this process. Is there any member of the public which would like to make a comment? This is your opportunity to do this. Right, Ms. Davis? I don't have my glasses on, but come right up. You can stand there if you feel comfortable there. That's fine as well.
Obviously, I'm opposed. It's 100,000.
Could you, just for the record, just give the clerk your name?
Susan Davis, I'm a town meeting member, 53 Dean Street. Thank you, Selectmen, for helping fix the flooding problem on Dean Street. Thank you very much. I'm hoping it helps, although they left a ditch that comes down into, but going further, I think Avalon and some of the projects that we are thinking of doing are going to really impact the flooding again. There were so many things that happened when the hospital flooded and when I flooded. I feel that made that happen. There was townhouses that were built by Rama. There was, I'm not sure when it happened, but Extra Space Storage had more hot top and cement and more storage. DPW right by the bridge where we flooded, of course, hot top and cement. I mean, a lot of this goes all the way to railroad tracks, and everything is downhill to South Norwood. A lot of us flooded in South Norwood. This project does go downhill to South Norwood. I don't see how it's not going to impact if it's built. I think it's in a bad area. I just don't know what to say. I mean, it's just bad.
Thank you.
Avalon probably, started, I think. And I guess Savagran, they're planning on building a Savagran. Wouldn't that be nice to hold the water that might come down to South Norwood instead of another apartment building also? I think that would be a good idea. Better than apartment buildings. You've got a lot by the railroad tracks already. We have the other apartment building that was by Railroad Ave. We've got a lot all around there. I think it's probably enough. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Hopefully you'll look at that.
Ms. Hested right here in front, and this gentleman here will be next.
Hey, thank you, Elizabeth Hested, Town Meeting Member, District 7. The particulars of the project, I'm not an expert, but I do think this is a really great opportunity to address some of the issues in the neighborhood that people have brought up. That intersection is awful. I feel like I don't even actually know how to correctly drive through it. So to be able to look holistically at this area where you can anticipate more traffic, know that like you already need to do something about it, to use this opportunity. I can't really compare the what's existing there to what is going in, but at the very least it looks like there will be more green space. There's none there now. Is that accurate? So this is an opportunity. Tony, sorry.
No, that's right. I'm trying to find the.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to improve what's currently a eyesore. I live right next to the Avalons. They literally abut my backyard, and they're there used to be animals and homeless people living there. This is where you will not have that if you put housing in here. I do also just want to say at Norwood Day, I spoke to a lot of people about housing. I run a pro-housing group here in Norwood, and people are really excited for 3-bedroom because there's not a lot of 3-bedroom rentals in Norwood right now. So I do want to applaud this for having some 3-bedrooms for growing families. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. This gentleman and then this gentleman in the corner.
My name is John Keane. I live at 19 Fairview Road, and as you said, that intersection is the most worst intersection in the whole of Norwood. And this new one egress in coming out, it's just a shit show. My wife, she won't even go out to Washington Street. She goes up Chapel Street to get out to go downtown. It's just terrible. That's one of my biggest issues. And then my other issue is the size of the building. It's just too big. And my house is right there, and it's just going to block the sun. It's going to be, I have no privacy in my backyard. They're going to take down all the trees. That's what I was told. And I have trees where my house is, on the first house on the corner, and they're going to take all the trees down, and that's my privacy. So that's the biggest issue.
In relation to that, thank you.
My house is right here, and they're going to take all these trees down. And I just put my fence up. I have my gazebo. That's my yard. There's my porch. And these are all going to go because that's where the parking is going to be back here. And I don't think that's fair. If they want to put in a building, have it way lower, and do not touch the trees. Them trees, I've been there 8 years and finally got privacy. So I'm kind of very upset. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The gentleman in the corner here, you're welcome to deliver from there. Thank you.
How's it going? I'm Brian Hummel. I live on Bruce Road, and I've been a property manager and in real estate for the last 15 years. I've worked on a lot of 40B projects. I'm not too happy about the size that it's coming in with. It kind of seems like a slap in the face that it was even presented to us at this size, knowing that the current zoning laws are. With affordable housing, it's meant for families. When I see, 80% 1-bedrooms, few 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms, it's doesn't seem like it's in it for the right of the heart. Kind of seems like a quick cash grab. As you guys pointed out, they knew what they were getting into when they bought the land. But to point out that intersection's terrible, as we know. I actually got hit by a car there 2 weeks ago, and it's been hard to walk. Lately, that's why I'm here today. So, they were coming out from that right-hand side, right where that would be. Bam, T-bone. So it's been hard for me to walk the last 2 weeks. I don't want to make this about me, but I just know that it's a very dangerous area for it to be. Also with these types of, buildings and developments. I moved from Dedham, which, as you guys know, has 40B housing, a bunch of it. That's why I moved. I'm great friends with Giorgio, who built all those, but it's not the town I want to be in. I don't want to be in a city. I want to be in a small knit community. I have no problem if they wanted to, create a building that might be double the size of the current zoning limits. That's fair. I could see that, but 10x the size of what you're allowed to build just doesn't fit right with me. Also, as you guys might not know, sorry, I'm emotional about this, as you can tell. There's a lot of tax benefits going into things like this. There's a lot of, things that, the builders can take advantage of. And kind of prying on a small town like Norwood just doesn't fit right with me. So I hope to see you guys potentially oppose this and, go with something that should be properly built.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bertucci, you had your hand up, I believe?
Yeah, so, hi, my name is Chris Bartuker. I own property next to it. I have my business next door. And I also have my house is actually right behind it. I have a lot of concerns with the size of the project, the space it has on the front of the building. He's going to, according to his plan, he's coming out just 5 feet right where the building is now. So you extend that all the way across the property from Washington Street. The visibility is going to be terrible for everyone just driving. That one concern there. The height is 4 stories in the back is just too much. That's going to dwarf my house. It even covers up my sign on my business. I had to get special permits years ago to have my sign above that building. And now, if you look at his project, it doesn't even, that shows on the 3rd floor. You can see my property. It covers that. So I don't even know if he can legally do that and cover up my property without affecting my property and my business. Let me see what else do I have. Just the appearance, I don't think it fits in the neighborhood at all. I look around the neighborhood, I see across the street, they have like 13 condos. They did a nice job with that. Similar size area. Up across from Garino's, they did another project. A nice job with that with condos. So I think the gentleman's asking too much. He talked about the enthusiasm of the neighbors. The enthusiasm is tearing down that building. Everybody wants to see that go. They'd be happy to see that go. But to put this monstrosity in, he says he came down from 42 units to 34. It's like, I was going to build, Foxwoods, but I'll take Twin Rivers instead. It's ridiculous. I think it's too much for that area. That, like they said, that where that area is, where you drive through, where it splits, that's where the cars are going to come out. That's a very dangerous area. And personally, for my business, where the building is now, when I have to, it ices up on the side, in the winter, it takes a while for that to defrost. This is twice the size. It's huge. I just think, I'd like to see something go in there, not a project of this size. I think it's taxing for the town. I just don't think it's a right fit.
Thank you, Mr. Bertucci. We have time for one more comment, this gentleman here, and then I'm going to return to the board to confer with the board regarding next steps. Come forward, sir. Musical chairs.
Yeah, under the gravity. Hello, Alex De Silva, District 9, for a town meeting, and I do want to say, taking into account people's reservations for projects, I think the fundamentals are still strong. Maybe cut back a tiny bit to, meet the neighbors where they are, but this town desperately needs housing. I've lived here all my life. I've watched prices go up, bend up, bend up, bend up. Well, people my age are priced out, and incumbent homeowners obviously do pretty well. But I think, like I said, this is a good spot for multifamily housing. This has half of the parking space. now. So this has, much more bedrooms and parking spaces. That means more people walking, more people taking transit. We have the commuter rail, we have the bus line. And I think that with a little bit of tweaking, we can make this something that works.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
all.
So at this point, please, we don't need that, please, please. The only comment should be made, when you're directed by the chairman to speak. At this point, I'd like to confer with the board. It is past 7:45. We do have another appointment for this evening. Mr. Mackey, I know that there's a number of things that you probably need to respond to as well, or?
All I want to do, with your permission, Mr. Chair, is process. There's a lot of substance here, and we would take the rest of the evening, and that's not fair to your next hearing.
Yeah.
I've been that guy before. But Mr. Plasko brought up a great point, as did yourself. As far as I know, this is only the second time we're doing this, and in Norwood, and this is different than the way it was done down the street in my office in South Norwood. So, again, we want to work with you. We can talk with Tony, we can talk with Sarah, whoever you want our point person to be. But Bill, if you want my engineer here, I'm happy to bring him in. But that's a decision for you guys to make. But I'm just offering, I have an engineer, I've got an architect. We will bring in whatever level of detail this board wants to be able to make a decision. And if you tell me, Phil, you've said enough, I'm fine with that too. But that, I just want to say, process-wise, we're all figuring this out. So as you deliberate and decide what our next step is, whatever we can do to work with you to provide you the information you want, whether it's good or bad is a different discussion, we're happy to do so. And that's really all I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. I also probably are going to assume that there were others that wanted to make public commentary, but we don't have the time this evening for that. Mr. Plasko, I think you might have a suggestion?
Now, before getting into anything else, is everyone who's here, can I see? There aren't people down the hall, are there? Okay. So everyone can hear, knows what's going on, all right. Mr. Chairman, I think you're right. I think we've heard all the comments, all the hands I saw anyhow. I think we should, as I outlined earlier, consider that we would be moving on to a third step, where we consider everything we have, better review, or I'll even use the word educate the board members to the whole purpose of this process and our role, review what we think may need any adjustments, if any, be ready to talk to those with ourselves, and also then follow up after that with the developer and take it a step at a time. But I think the first thing is to continue the discussions to a step where we take the matter under advisement, review the plans closer, the proposal closer. There's some things that this is a real general introduction. If we saw the application that goes in, there'd be details there that we may want to know what they are that haven't been presented to us yet. So after, after we had some time to have some discussions, we may ask you to feedback more information. And then we have a third meeting, whenever you think appropriate to set it up. That gives us some time. And we probably start off, I think you mentioned, that education, bring Ms. Dixon in, some copies of the rules and regulations themselves, or guidelines from DHCD, well, it used to be DHCD, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and go from there. I think we should adjourn this evening, however, and not think about anything further. It's too big an issue.
Is the suggestion that we adjourn it and continue the hearing at another date and time to be determined?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lane.
Would that be another opportunity for public comment?
Yes, it would be, because I did notice, when I did ask, I think, ma'am, you did raise your hand. So there'll be more folks who want to put public commentary. We'll get you that opportunity to do that.
Oh, I know, you might want that before we get into other things on.
Okay, let's just poll here. How many other public comments?
I'm sorry, I meant at another time. What are we talking about right now?
No, my thought was that we'd start digesting things, but if there's more input,
Get it now, and then still
If we-
got it.
if we-
Understood.
we don't want to start doing that before we have the input.
Got it.
Mr. Mizuko.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just two things. In regards to process, Mr. Mackey brings up a good point. I think we've done 3 lips in 10 years. This would be the 3rd in 10 years. One of them was an after-the-fact one, so it didn't really matter. It was a different process. The last one, the applicant actually went to the zoning board, and the ZBA went through the project. They just asked for relief. Ultimately, it came to, after the ZBA had a number of meetings and a number of neighborhood meetings and really worked the details of it, it didn't qualify for a variance under the state zoning rules. They supported the project, but they recommended the lip. So this seems to be a little bit of a reverse of that process. That might be a discussion point separate from this particular project about whether in the future you'd want applicants to first go to the zoning board, see if there's the ability for relief. Even if the zoning board doesn't grant it, ultimately they're working through that process, just as that way it might be 3 or 4 zoning meetings, because you may be continuing the hearing and taking public comment in 30 days. I'm making that number up. It may not be for a while. We don't have a timeline prescribed under law that we're required to follow up, so it's not like a zoning meeting where it's generally continued to the next hearing. This is really at the discretion of the board because you're choosing to have a hearing and choosing to take that input. That'll likely be several meetings going forward. You'll take further input and work on it. But as the board works with that, consider whether or not maybe we want to look at the process that was used before as a better way to get to a final product.
It's a good suggestion, but I'm sensing that if we can do it this evening, we probably should take further input if that's possible. How many other folks are there? We have 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think you can.
Okay. We have 4 people. We'll delay our 7:45 meeting for, let's say, 15 minutes, and I'll take the next 4 speakers, and then we'll make a decision regarding carrying on. Ma'am, you have the floor. The lady behind you, Mary, this lady, and you first. Will you go here, then Mary, and there are 2 folks over here. Okay. Go right
Karen,
in.
Town Meeting Member, District 2. So I'm looking, unfortunately I can't really see up there. I'm looking at the picture with all the old dilapidated building and the one beside it. In between those 2 buildings, there's a lot of green space. There's a nice yard. It might be weeds, it might be whatever, but at least it's green space and all the trees behind it. All that's gonna get torn down and be put in with tar. If it's at even a slight incline, and then we know what happened when the hospital got flooded. That intersection there, the rocks were coming out of there. So how are you gonna redistribute all that water coming off of all that tar now with no green space? I mean, it looks like a couple little flowers in the beginning or whatever, but if all that water is now going over the bridge and down Washington Street under the bridge, it's gonna cause more problems. That's how we got in trouble with the hospital. So I don't know, do they have an answer, like where all that water's gonna go?
I think what we'll do is, I think we're fielding a lot of the issues and questions, and then when we return again, as Mr. Mackey just noticed,
Okay.
we'll collect the information for this evening and then allow the developer to address the concerns that have been
I mean, like
raised.
town meeting, everything was adding green space, adding green space, adding green space. Now it's taking away all the green space and the trees.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mary Paz, please.
Mary Paz, I live in District 6, and I live in South Norwood, and so I do have one of the concerns is the water coming down there. And I had read this interesting article in the New York Times about porous roadways that they're building in New York, which is a way of, I guess they're doing it someplace in nowhere too, where the water that comes in is actually going through soil, and they have like it's like a lasagna, they said. And I think that's something that could be considered, because especially if the units have washers and dryers, and then with the rain, I don't know how much the town can handle all of that. And I certainly don't want to see that water coming down, because my street got flooded during that last thing. I had sent Mr. Corrigan an email, but it was kind of belated. He might not have gotten it till yesterday, and I forwarded it to you guys. just before this meeting, and I didn't realize I had to say, could it be red? Which is fine, because I don't think it should have been. I understand that coming down from 32 units could be a problem because you're looking at your profit margin. But again, somebody had mentioned if they were condos, then that would be a different kind of situation for you. Then the building needn't be so tall. The other thing quickly is there are no balconies, and then these skinny windows remind me of the jail in Dallas.
Yeah.
I lived in Dallas, so I don't know if those windows are from the hallway, because I know you've got hallways going into apartments, but I'm wondering exactly how you're going to sell this kind of thing if people are living in places with like one window. Let me see what else I said. The rush hour traffic. Right now, there are so many cars that at rush hour, it goes from the light down on Dean in Washington up past where this building is going to be. So adding more, and when one egress, I realized there might be one off the parking lot, but isn't that going into the parking lot of the donuts and stuff? I mean, so I'm not sure that would work, but coming out, I don't know how you're gonna get them across those lanes because that's where it splits. So, and the other thing, where we go? I'm gonna be quick. I think, and I just don't understand I was wondering about the roof. You said the neighbors don't want it, but there are ways of putting greenery on roofs which kind of help with, combating all of the tar. The other thing too is, your parking area in the back needn't be just all tar. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to the right, ma'am.
Yeah.
Welcome to add commentary.
Great, thank you guys very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm a 10-year resident
If
of
you could
Norwood.
just give us your name, please.
Sorry,
That's all right.
Jackie Arnold, live up on Walnut Ave around the Elks Parkway as well. And again, 10-year resident, we moved here 10 years ago as a transplant from the Midwest, grew up in a town similar to Norwood. We want to stick in a township town. We don't want a metropolis, we don't want Newton, we don't want Brighton. Respectfully, you guys do great work. I simply think this is the right building, the wrong place, ultimately. There is an opportunity for more green space. It's not consistent with the neighborhood. And you brought up the selling point of how close this was to Moderna. I challenge you to tell me the average tenure of the employee there. Are they renters? Do they own homes? Are they looking for condos? Or do they want a rental-like home township? So we're opposed, and most of the comments that have been said today, we agree with, and we invite you guys to take that into consideration. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comment. And I think the gentleman just behind you also wanted to.
Yeah, I'm married to her. Rick Arnold.
Is that it?
So you agree? Yeah, right. So I'm on her side. I just wanted to just quickly mention that as of today on Zillow in Norwood, there are 124 rentals available for rent. That does not take into consideration the Lenox Street project on another 145 rental opportunities. There are 18 properties to buy in Norwood. I don't think we need any more rentals in Norwood. I think we need properties for people to buy, maybe a condo as a starting point to maybe buy a home later. So that was the only comment I had. I think the juxtaposition right now between rentals and ownership opportunity is just way out of whack.
Can I add to that real quick?
No.
So your guys are getting into my wine time, so I'll be quick. We're both, he's a little younger, so millennial, I'm a Gen Y. We both grew up owning our own condo first, then buying our first home together. We didn't rent, we owned. That's your key audience, right? You want to bring in the youth, the first-time home buyers. They're the 20-year-olds, they're the 30-year-olds. I understand the housing crisis, but like my husband said, it's being solved with what's currently on plan. So that's my last comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we've had some next steps outlined from a board perspective. So to the board, at this point, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Just on the
Yes,
motion,
Mr.
Mr.
Sad.
Chairman, I would behoove the attorney and the principal of this development to strongly look at the comments and questions and tweak that building. I just don't think it's good for Norwood. I just want you to think of that real serious before you come back to this board, because These people are gonna bring another ton of people with them next hearing.
Do I have a motion? Mr. Lane makes a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Grove. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. All opposed? None? Unanimous. Thank you, folks, for coming in and offering public comment.
You guys want a permit for block?
We will outline further plans and sessions for the board to consider in the future, but thank you very much.
You got it. You got it. Call me on it.
We close this hearing, so the next, we'll wait till these folks leave.
We don't need any legal hearing at this point. You will with the zoning board. Not too bad, Mr. Chairman.
No, we got through it. So, Mr. Mackey, I think we did close the hearing. That does not mean that you will not have opportunity to address the input that's delivered here this evening. I think we need as a board to work with Mr. Mizuko and Ms. Dixon in terms of what the appropriate next steps in, to have you back in, to have more discussion. Will you need anything from us in terms of the discussion points this evening? All right, very good. There you go. Thank you for coming in.
Relatively repetitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were like 6 comments.
Okay, all right.
So I get it.
Thank you.
We
Yeah.
understand the concerns.
All right, appreciate it.
Take a look at it. It's a pleasure.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right.
These people take just as long as you will.
Oh, boy.
That's
Yeah.
up to you.
So Mel, would you mind closing the doors of the, if anybody wants to come in, they can. Tony, we might as well close the doors now.
We're shuffling, we gotta keep the doors open technically, we're shuffling everyone out.
Okay, fine.
As fast as we
All right.
shuffling down the stairs.
Don't do that. Good evening. How is everyone? So I think we're ready to proceed. Very well. So the next item is meeting with the representatives from the Community Preservation Committee. Kristen Phelps, Joe Greeley, Catherine Walsh. Catherine is the chair of the seat. Interim chair? Interim chair, all right.
I make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Greeley is a member, and Kristen is our CPC coordinator. And Ms. Doyle, hello, long time no see.
I know.
Saw you last night.
Forever.
Right. So the CPC article concerning 20 Vernon Street is on the warrant for later discussion this evening, and ultimately, we also have a secondary item to review the special town meeting yellow sheet. However, we felt that it was important to bring this group in this evening to kind of brief me as to the work the CPC has done over the last few weeks regarding 20 Vernon Street, which we allow you to do, of course. And I did attend yesterday's FinCom meeting too, so you may want to just integrate into your discussion points where that committee came at in regards to the proposed project at 20 Vernon Street. Have I covered, is that fair enough?
It is.
All right.
It is.
So with that, why don't I turn it over to you folks to talk to us a little bit about the Vernon Street, what you have seen, what you've done, and the board will have any questions, they'll address them to you.
Terrific. So as the interim chair, I would love to provide some comments. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and select men and women. Happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity. So I'm going to run through my comments relatively quickly. I'm a fast speaker, so I'll try and get through as quickly as possible, and then open to any questions, comments, or suggestions. So first of all, I just want to start out by reminding everybody, and I'm sure you all know this, but I think it's important just to put it out on the table. So CPC funds can only be used for 3 different categories. So it's open space and recreation, historical resources, and community housing. And so it cannot be used as a supplement to existing operating funds that have already been dedicated for similar purposes. So those are the 3 categories. And so what I would like to do is talk a little bit about why the CPC approved the 20 street project. So I think most importantly is that the project aligned with the goals set out in the community preservation plan and the housing criteria that is in the CPA application materials. And so affordable housing projects by nature are infrequent, the financing is very complicated and very varied based on projects. And so to date, the only prior project that we would consider significant is a housing project that was for the value of $350,000 for the Norwood Housing Authority for Manhattan Village. And absent that, we've had very few applications for housing projects, and those applications have been for a relatively small dollar value, and I guess I would consider not significantly impactful. I think it's also important to note that the Norwood Housing Authority Director does in fact support this project, and that the project leverages outside funding, state and federal, and that the Norwood contribution to this project will be 11%. So I think it's important to also point out that the initial outlay of the funds is required to bring this project to fruition. And all subsequent activities in terms of identifying quality veterans, managing the rentals, maintaining the building, providing the wraparound services, which I believe it's fair to say that the CPC thought that it was a very robust wraparound service program that provided 24-hour site presence at the location. And so in speaking with the Caritas that operates with state agencies that interact with other affordable housing proponents, we've heard nothing but positive feedback about Caritas and some of the affordable housing projects that they've implemented. We had a working group that worked on this project that met with Caritas and a lot of the members of town committees, and they toured they formed a working group, and then they actually toured a facility. And so overall, the feedback has been really positive about Caritas. And so I guess I just want to say, this is a really significant amount of money, and I think everybody can agree to that. And so I'm sure you guys are well aware that this project will provide housing for 20 units, so 20 veterans, 19 of them veterans, and one is a director of the facility who is going to be a veteran. And so I think if you take a look at the contribution we're asking for or looking to be approved, $800,000, 20 units, that comes out to be $40,000 per unit. And so the Mass Affordable Housing Alliance estimates that for affordable housing, the typical order of magnitude is about $600,000. And so in terms of the contribution that Norwood will make to this project, $40,000 is a really, in my mind, a very prudent number. And if you amortize it over 10 years, we're looking at $4,000 per unit per year. And so I think it's safe to say that the CPC really felt like this was a significant project. Caritas came to us with a reasonable funding. When we went back They reduced the amount of funding. The overall project value did go up, but it reduced the funding from 1 million down to 800. And we feel like these projects will not come along very frequently. We don't have an affordable trust, and I believe that this is a really unique opportunity to make an impact. And so I think if you talk with all the folks that we have met with, the community members, everyone agrees that there is value in doing this. They support it conceptually, they support veterans, they think it's a great location, but there seem to be keying on the dollar value. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. And then to address the chairman's comments, we met with the FinCom last night. We presented sort of an overview of the project. FinCom members had a number of different questions. And the takeaway was that they did not vote to approve or disapprove the project. They agreed to take it up on the October 10th meeting. And so Caritas / the CPC will be providing some additional information to the FinCom. First is the valuation of the property, and that's important because that will inform us about how much real estate tax that the town will receive that could potentially offset the local contribution to the operating costs. So the FinCom really wants to understand sort of, what is the town's exposure on the operating budget side. Secondly, they want the amount of the mortgage. Secondly, the score sheet from the VA. And I think it's also important to note that as part of the $1 million to $800,000, they met with the Veterans Veteran Agency, and yeah, and so they have committed to prioritizing Norwood's veterans. So if they're down on the list, they would bump up to the top. And then they also wanted an explanation of why the cost estimate went up. So it went up, as one of the members thought, was significantly. So they just want to get a handle on how the first estimate was done in the second. So, and then the other thing is the appraisal is coming in shortly, which is very important in terms of whether or not the whole deal goes through. So anyway, in summary, the Concom, sorry, I'm on the Concom the CPC felt like this was a really amazing project. And as someone who's new to the CPC, I felt like proud to be able to move this forward. I understand that it's a lot of money, but I do not think we could create the amount of new affordable housing for veterans for anywhere near anywhere near 800,000 in the future. So, anything to add, colleagues?
Yeah, I guess if I can just jump in on a few of the things, the other issues that arose at the FinCom meeting last night. The grant agreement was provided by Town Council about little over a week ago, and it's still basically in draft form, and there was some feedback from the FinCom about the term sheet, the terms in the term sheet, and whether they would be incorporated into this grant agreement. And so we've had that conversation with Town Council, and they are in the process of updating, editing, and there'll be, I'm sure, more back and forth and additional versions of the grant agreement. At the working group, there was discussion about moving forward with a grant agreement, including a clawback provision as well as a security instrument versus a loan process. And both Town Council and the town's finance director had advised that this approach, the grant agreement with the security instrument, was the better in the absence of an affordable housing trust, that it was it provided same level of security for the town and in a way that they could administer, that they had kind of the capacity to administer. So that Town Council took that and they went in that direction. Caritas was open to either, and I would imagine that Town Council could put together an alternative approach, but that was their professional recommendation that we do a grant agreement security instrument with the clawback provisions that included the terms in the term sheet. So there'll be more back and forth, I think, on the grant agreement. I was in touch with them yesterday, so hopefully in the next day or two we'll have round two of the grant agreement. As Catherine mentioned, the appraisal is well underway. I spoke to them today, and we expect to have that in hand by the end of this week. So that piece of information that I know was very important in this last round will be in hand. And I guess the last thing I wanted to address, I don't know if anybody watched the FinCom meeting last night, but there was a lot of discussion about where the money was going to come from and what the breakdown was across the three categories of spending. So I know we had mentioned this to you all last time, but spending to date exceeds $4 million in CPA projects. About $2 million of that has gone to open space, about 1.83 has gone to historic, and about $374,000 has gone to community housing projects. So that's a 47, 44, 9% breakdown, respectively. If this were to move forward, we'd go from 47, 44, 20, and 9 to 40% in open space, 37 in historic, 23% in community housing. And then the other piece that came up was where the money was going to come from, and the breakdown between community housing, the Community Housing Reserve Fund. I'm not going to get into the breakdown of where the money is stored, but there's an undesignated fund, and there's a significant portion, $600 of the $800,000 being requested. The CPC recommended that come out of the undesignated reserve fund. To date, none of the housing projects have come out of undesignated. Every housing project has come out of the housing reserve fund, so only housing projects can be funded out of that reserve fund. About 1.2 million of undesignated funds have been used for historic projects, and 1.38 million of undesignated funds have been used for open space and recreation projects. So again, if this project were to be funded, it would be half the amount spent out of undesignated for this particular category. So I guess I just wanted to make that clear, because it was a topic of lengthy discussion last night, and happy to share my pie charts and and graphs. And just finally, again, Catherine mentioned the difficulty or the scarcity of housing projects. We've had 3 that were recommended to town meeting to date, that there were appropriations and projects that went forward with. We've had 19 historic and 13 open space, so in over 7 years of funding. So it's just, they don't come up very frequently. They're hard, they're expensive, and I would expect that to continue to be the case. I've talked to Sean Barnacle, as Catherine mentioned. He is in favor, and will be submitting a letter of support for the 20 Vernon Street project. He intends to submit application funding this year for some preservation work at, it's not in Hutton, but it's I think in the $150,000 to $200,000 range for preservation work. But right now, they're the kind of one entity in town that has come looking for housing funds, and I think can't remember if it came up last night. It's very challenging to create new housing, and they're limited by federal law in terms of creating new units. So this is an opportunity to actually create new units, and I'll try not to get too into this either, but it honestly was the purpose of CPA when it was adopted at the state level 24 years ago. It was about the creation. They specifically prohibited restoration or rehabilitation of existing units. They allow preservation, and that's controversial. But the goal was to create new affordable housing units. And as you all know, that's a big, it's a problem. Affordable housing across the country is an issue, and this is one way that people are trying to address it. So.
And even though we don't own and operate those housing units potentially, that does count to the Norwood's overall affordable housing.
Yes, John.
Yes.
Just a real quick comment about the process that we've gone through to date. The CPC had taken this under advisement. We knew early on that the advocate was going to come forward with a revised application. We specifically opened the window specifically for this project as a fall special town meeting, as opposed to our normal cycle is an annual cycle to come in front of town meeting in May. So we knew this was coming. We tried to prepare as much as we could, and the CPC, once we did our own due diligence, the CPC voted it as a majority in favor of advocating for the project and proposing it to town meeting. Knowing the complexity of the project, in parallel to that, we formed the working group. We created a working group. In July, we've met so far 3 times. And that's really from a from a townwide due diligence standpoint, that's really where the bulk of the work has taken place. Not that the CPC hasn't, but in that working group, we've had member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the Finance Commission, member of the CPC, a representative from the Community Development Office, the general manager, town council has joined us for one of the most recent meeting, the September 10th. And that body has done the bulk of the, if you will, like the cross, the inter-committee work, if you will, that has pulled all this together, the grant agreement. The frequently asked questions has been truly a consolidation of questions and bullet points that we wanted to advocate for, and just essentially let town meeting know that we've tried to dot every I and cross every T. But ultimately, those documents, like the grant agreement, is in draft form, and we know even last night at the Finance Commission meeting, other things that hadn't been raised, other points that hadn't been raised, or specific questions were raised at that meeting. So we're basically going back to the, not from scratch, but we're going back to the drawing board again, because those are issues that hadn't been raised before or incorporated in the grant agreement. And likewise, the frequently asked questions, we're now up to 28 or 30, I don't know how many, whatever. It's like 8 pages essentially of frequently asked questions that we know we've received questions and highlights, and people feel strongly about specific issues. And that's where, as Catherine said, we've polled more than 15 references, both local and at the state level, and comparable facilities. We took a tour. Chris and I took a tour last month of one of the facilities in New Bedford, not owned by Caritas, but comparable in size, shape, and purpose. But ultimately, the Community Preservation Committee voted in favor of this project, looking at the service and the resource that it provides well into the future, 10, 20 years, whatever. And that's really the focus of the CPC, is the benefit to the community that this will yield if town meeting so wills. So.
Thank you, Mr. Greeley.
Could I just add one other thing? So Joe was talking about process, and so the process here was different than any other CPC project that we've approved, in that the projects are approved at town meeting and then the grant agreements are negotiated afterwards. And so the takeaway for CPC is, I think at some point we need to get with other town committees to determine if they want to see the grant agreement in advance of the town meeting. So, like I said, it's a takeaway for the CPC. And, perhaps we might have been perceived as not providing all the information, and we might have underestimated the information that other committees needed. So rest assured, we might approach it differently in the future. But, that made it a little bit more clumsy than it probably should have been.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I should also just acknowledge Mr. Lane as our CPC representative to the board. Do you have anything to add to the discussion here? Or?
Not that could improve the presentation thus far, but I think this was a new type of project for us, and so definitely there was a learning curve, but I appreciate what was produced, and I think that these documents, that took a lot of work from a lot of people, most of whom were not paid to do this. At least I was. Well, yeah, you guys weren't either. But yeah, and I think last night's FinCom meeting, and Mr. Donnelly was there as well, it was productive too. And obviously there's still some questions, and the hope is to get that information to the FinCom, that they would take a vote before town meeting. I think that's where we left it. Yes. So, yeah.
So before I opened up to board members, the FinCom did have a definitive date that they wanted that information by. Could you remind us what it is?
October 10th.
The 10th is the meeting, they want the 7th.
7th, yeah.
Yeah.
The 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, that's good to know for us as well.
And sorry, one more point.
Yes.
So October 10th is their next meeting.
Right.
So we're working in advance to provide that information. But they also plan to have a meeting prior to the town meeting.
Yep.
So they have, on the agenda so far, they have 2 more meetings planned between now and town meeting.
Good to know as well. our planning, our timeline for meetings is October the 8th and 22nd, and we will put forward a tentative schedule for the 9 town meeting just in case. I say that because it appear that perhaps the timeline that you're discussing regarding the documentation update might fit into one of our meetings as well. So with that, thank you to you, especially to interim chair Welch. Thank you. At this point, can I open up for discussion from the board? Ms. Grove?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one question, or not so much a question, I guess, reaffirming that my understanding is correct. I got a couple questions from people about the fact that it's essentially a private entity, but my understanding is that, at least from the statements from the Department of Revenue that I've seen, that so long as the deed restriction is there, that is what allows a private entity to do this type of project, because the deed restriction is considered to be the benefit to the public, essentially. Is that accurate?
I think that is accurate, and I'd just like to add a little bit to that, that it's a nonprofit, mission-driven organization that is committed to develop affordable housing.
Excellent. That was my only comment. It might be something worth including in the FAQs. People seem a little confused, like, wait, but it's not town-owned. It's like, well, there are nuances to this.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
To my right, Mr. Plasko, any comments or questions?
Yes, questions. I guess they're questions. My wife heard somewhere, I did not hear myself, that there's been some questions at some of these public meetings about ongoing costs to the town. What is that? What would that be? I never heard of that previously.
You can chime in on that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Did you want?
I can address that, yeah. As the board knows, we, like every town in the Commonwealth, operate the state's Chapter 115 Veterans Assistance Program, in which, depending on a veteran's veteran status, of course, and their income level, they're eligible for, call it a subsidy or support from the town. Now, the state reimburses us they reimburses 75% of those eligible costs. That number can run as high as $25,000 per veteran who income qualifies for that. We then actually get reimbursed 75% by the state. So I think there's 21 units, is this still the total? 20. The one's the manager operator. Whatever. So you could argue that could be a $100,000 cost to the town if every veteran qualifies for that and we get the reimbursement. But that's the maximum reimbursement. It is income based. We do know that we're targeting ELI or extreme low income veterans. My estimate's probably closer to the $30,000 mark. We just don't know. That veterans number is a commodity. I always refer to it during the budget process as a commodity cost. It is a statutory required cost. 20 veterans that meet that income level can move into different parts of Norwood tomorrow when we would have to pay it. Other benefits don't matter. It doesn't matter whether you get subsidized housing, whether you don't get subsidized housing. It is specific to the veteran and their income level. So I would peg, and I've let the FinCom know this, the budgetary impact possibly around $30,000. Understanding it could be zero, it could likely be twice that. I don't think that will necessarily
Twice zero?
be the
I'll
case.
pay that.
What's that?
Twice zero?
Well, no, twice that $30,000 number. Again, it's just it's a wild limit, and it's all a state program. We don't really have any discretion in the program. So my estimate is probably $30,000. But I want to be clear, that's the sort of maximum impact, assuming that the facility is fully loaded. There are 20 veterans that qualify, all living there. We don't pay that once somebody moves out of town or if there are vacancies there. So as the churn goes through, typical of any property, I think that's probably where we'll settle. But our 115 numbers have been flattish the last couple of years. They've actually trended down a little bit.
All right, so it's not directly connected to the
Development.
to the project, but it's a side effect.
But I think it's important, that's why we've asked Caritas for the valuation, so that we can assess the tax revenue impacts that potentially offset that.
We should
To
note
be determined.
that they have, is the commitment to pay real estate taxes is part of the documentation that we would be looking at.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Currently, that property pays roughly $22,000 per year as it stands today.
But it would be reassessed at the improvement value, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They would be, because of the function that even though they're Caritas is a nonprofit entity, because of the function, they would only be tax exempt if that was their home base, their headquarters, and that's all the only function they performed in that building. But because this is a ancillary, it's a different facility, they are subject to taxes per Mass General Law.
If I could just jump in, Mr. Grilli, on
Yeah,
that.
sure.
The original sort of MOA we had prior to this getting delayed included that they would pay the assessed value just as anyone else, or if they were found to be not have to pay that they would pay the same amount. I understand they keep claiming that they have to pay taxes. There is never a time in the history of the Commonwealth that the Appellate Tax Board hasn't ruled a 501c3 doesn't have to pay taxes, but I'm not their tax attorney, so neither here nor there, but that's something we talked about that will be worked into the agreement, that whatever that value is, call it $30,000 and making the number up. They pay the taxes like anyone else. If for some reason the Appellate Tax Board did rule one day that they did not have to pay property taxes as a nonprofit, that they would grant the town a pilot, or we would come up with a different term payment equal to that amount.
And they have cited other facilities that are already up and running that they are paying either pilot or.
Yeah, they
real
told
estate.
us that when they were here,
Yeah, okay.
Again, we're not their tax attorneys, but
Yeah.
we've covered our bases either way.
We don't play one on television, right?
I don't know if it's a concern of ours, but I just want to note the fact that you asked for their cost of operations, and they put in here that they have property manager fee and support service fees. And they also have told us to go after state grants, state monies. I'm assuming they're going to go after what's available to them and likely get it, which means they probably have no support service fees, because the new housing bill that was just passed allows for veterans programs like this to, for support service purposes, up to $20,000 per individual. So they're likely to be making significant money on that, not as an overhead expense. You mentioned amortization, 10 years. I missed what that was connected to.
I was just making the case that the overall investment, when you look at a 10-year life of the facility per unit calculates out to $4,000. I guess we're just
I
really.
guess that was my question too.
Yeah.
Why 10 years? You expect these to only last 10 years?
No, I don't, but
Okay.
$4,000 seemed like a really good price to me. And, I mean, there's no intention for them to go away. They're investing a lot of money in this property. They have a mortgage, they have a construction loan, they've got skin in this game. So I think if we grant them this and the project moves forward, I think they're gonna be in our community for a long time doing really great work.
Okay. You just mentioned, I guess was my next question, the future. What happens when they can't get veteran applicants? We want to house the veterans, we want to help the veterans. Nobody that I ever heard has a problem with that concept. There's other parts of this that we have problems with. And yet that's a very real potential for the future, that there will not be veterans. Just look at our own veterans housing project. There are 75 units, and the last time I checked, there was one that has any connection to the veteran status. So I could see that happening here as well in time. So what do we have then?
Well,
Just
I think-
another apartment, one bedroom apartment
Well,
building?
Well, no, because there will be a deed restriction on the property that limits it to affordable housing, so it would be prohibited to turn it into regular housing. And, I can't specifically answer the question with regard to occupancy levels, but I can tell you we've seen their pro forma, and their pro forma indicates that they will be filled. And, they're really experts in that area, and they are projecting what the VA folks will need in terms of housing. So, we're relying on their projections. They're the experts in this area.
Is it the intent that the units will be in perpetuity, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And where is that recorded, on the deed?
On the deed.
I mean, typically.
There'll be a deed restriction.
Typically, these housing, like the last one we were just talking about, is part of a comprehensive permit, and it's required there. That's not part of this process.
No, it'll be affordable housing deed restriction in perpetuity.
Okay. And I thought I had one more little point, question. Oh, and I don't know if you can answer this because it's kind of legal. Why, and I know council, when he was here the last time we had a meeting and he was present, said that maybe we should need a mortgage. I don't understand how we give the mortgage in a grant, get a mortgage in a grant. And the mortgage states basically that we're gonna get, what I'm reading here, other than the units, which we're gonna get anyhow for giving the grant, and it's gonna be put into the deed. Everything else here is simply what they have to give us anyhow. Taxes, other charges and assessments.
Right, I believe the mortgage was council's concern that to make sure that there's still an investment being made and you never know what's going to happen, so that way we would still have the ability to foreclose on a portion of the building. Again, not anticipating it, but let's just say tomorrow there's a recession and they go out of business. I mean, they're a nonprofit, that wouldn't necessarily happen, but it's one additional means to make sure that the town could recover its money until for the next 20 years, whatever the term is. It's just an additional protection for the town.
Thank you.
And if I just could, Mr. Chairman, I know early on, I keep referencing, we had sort of agreed to this. We had a very informal MOA of things Caritas had agreed with. The process was delayed so that we could work this into a more formal grant agreement. But we'd addressed at the time, I had addressed with Caritas the concern about what happens if they're not able to fill those slots with veterans. They're anticipating being able to do it, but the reality is it may not actually happen. I don't want to say it may not happen. There's always a possibility it could happen. Warren Buffett could come in and donate $1 billion to the town of Norwood tomorrow. That's a possibility too. So it's a far out one. But we talked about both the grant agreement and trying to structure the specific deed restriction in a way that if it ever became unfeasible for them to offer veterans housing before it would convert into other affordable housing, that this board would have the ability to approve or deny that. Now, that being said, if 20 years from now the country has solved the problem of low-income veterans and it's not an issue whatsoever and there's simply no one that could go in there, they're not just going to go out of business. The property would have to turn into some other kind of low-income housing, but that this board would have some control in that process. In that very unlikely scenario, we're just trying to cover all of our bases.
Thank you. Mr. Sad, any comments? Or?
No, I just think that it's a big take for the town of Norwood, 800,000. We take care of our veterans. We could put it to more like a senior 55 and over complex. We've got plenty of land, we can start popping these up. I'll work with anybody and I'll get moving on that, but it just seems that it's a lot of taxpayer dollars for Norwood veterans, and there's not many Norwood veterans because we take care of them firsthand anyway, so that's all. I'm not with the project, so that's all I can say.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate all the documentation that you've sent to us. Personally, I see a lot of advantages to the program. I'm noting in your Q&As your references to the housing production plan. I think there's another reference to Affordable Housing Trust. There are certain vehicles that I know other communities do use to support housing that we do not have. We don't have an Affordable Housing Trust. We don't have a local community development corporation that can take on projects like this. So I do understand that this is new to Norwood, but I think just like under the development that a CDC would do, or the possibilities of an affordable housing trust being available to help support developments like this, I think the end objective for each of those vehicles is the same as this one, and I see a lot of positives here. I do believe that we will discuss this when we get to our warrant discussion. I do believe that we, as well as the FinCom, would have an interest in getting the update with the documentation that has been discussed prior to the town meeting, so that we can, as a board, make our most diligent and educated vote that we can take. And I appreciate that once those documents are in hand, that you get them to us as well as soon, so perhaps we can look at them as well before our next meeting. Mr. Plasko, you had something else to add?
Well, not really to this whole thing, but to just kind of a little bit of a follow-up on the comment you just made. Talked a little bit about getting some housing plans for the town, some strategic plans, whether the selectmen might want to be getting involved in that, or even if we didn't directly the master plan process would be getting into that. And so these are some of the things that we don't have now that we want to be having in those discussions. And there is a local group, nonprofit organization established to provide affordable housing. Unfortunately, only on one piece of property. They have not been particularly active, but the organization exists. It functions. I carried the documentations for incorporation to the Secretary of State's office myself. So there is something that if we think we need a local group to work with, we could try to work with them to get involved and get active and assist us if there's not necessarily this program, some other things in the future. Just make people aware. Just make people aware that there's something out here. Maybe that we don't have to start from step one. Maybe we can be at step two.
And being the master plan steering committee, I will personally meet with you to make sure that that particular organization in the detail you just described gets into the information package for that steering committee to review and have in hand as well. Thank you.
And if I could, to that point, when Norwood adopted the CPA and created the CPC, the open space and recreational use of land and the historic aspect and those focuses, we went through, early on, the committee went through each of those two categories and said, who are the likely advocates? Like, who can we work on outreach to the likely candidates who can submit applications, and we can stay in touch with them and try to foster interest in this whole CPA project, in the CPA process. But when you go over to the housing side of it, the only known entity at that time, and still, is the Housing Authority. To that point of not having a housing, any kind of formal housing authority, whether it's regionally or in town, that we're really challenged in that we, the CPC, because we can't advocate it because there is not an entity that we can approach. So certainly going forward, if that's something that the town has interest in and we think there's a benefit to that long term, then that should definitely be built into the comprehensive plan.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Before we end, Ms. Doyle, thank you. Do you have anything you want to add, or?
No, I'm just
They did great, didn't they?
Can I just ask a procedural question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
We typically provide you with a project description and then draft a motion for Mr. DeLuca to review. And I guess the working group, the discussion was, given the complexity and the back and forth, that town council would be taking care of that. So I just want to, apologize for not having provided that to you. I don't know if you're looking for yellow sheet information tonight, but we're certainly ready to chime in with any language or information that's needed for those documents as well.
Thank you very much. All right, thanks. Well, thank you for coming in and for your work.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Picking up on our agenda, we still have our special town meeting warrant to review, the yellow sheet, review of performance for the general manager. And we also have CPC requests from the Historical Commission for discussion. They're in your packet, and we'll take them one by one for discussion. Mr. Mizuko, these are pre-application packages for our review. The old lockup, the pumping station on Route 1, and St. Gabriel's Chapel. As I understand, these are town properties that are under the direction of the Board of Selectmen, and
Correct.
in order for the application to be fully considered by the CPC would require our consent?
Correct. The process established by this board and the CPC several years ago that for town boards and committees, submitting town projects that didn't necessarily come from like the manager's office, that the board be aware and approve these said projects. The board still approves ultimately anything that comes from the town staff, but just to make sure there wasn't a committee out there trying to work on a project that the board didn't feel comfortable with or was possibly going to lead to operational costs, et cetera.
Okay, so our discussion this evening for each of them would be whether or not the board feels that as a property owner, so to speak, that we would agree to putting these forward to the CPC for consideration in the pre-application process.
Correct.
Okay, we'll take them one by one. I pulled up here, the first one I have up, well, I'll ask the board. I have the old lockup, the jail. This is you have the application in hand. This is a request for $35,000 to assess the existing conditions and analyze the needed rehabilitation, focusing on the roof, the exterior, interior, and to determine how best to preserve, protect, restore, and enhance this historical and cultural resource to the town of Norwood. It is necessary for the original bullets and the air vents and the original iron bars on the original windows remain. That is from the application. I'll open that up for discussion by the board. Mr. Plasko.
Yeah, I'll step forward. I'm opposed to this. I don't think the amount of money makes sense to me, but beyond that, I don't think the idea of trying to historically restore that building and the way it is today and the possible future uses of that space coexist, if you will, work together. And I want to keep the town's options open for other uses and just don't see historic significance in that. And $35,000 just to even look into it seems too high for me. So I'm opposed to this going forward with anything further on the CPC application regarding the old lockup building.
Thank you, Mr. Plasko. Any other board members? Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be opposed as well. I think I'd rather see this be a part of any kind of redevelopment plan for town hall, say in the future. I don't think it's a pressing need. I don't particularly see the value. I mean, if it were $35,000, I'd put a new roof on it with that money, you know, as opposed to a study. And, you know, I don't particularly think it's got a lot of value. I mean, we've been using it for storage for how long, Mr. Mizuko?
Decades.
And it was built in 1928, I think.
No, I think
Right?
this actually predates town hall.
Okay.
There was the HR office used to be in there when we started the HR department. Bob, you might know you were on the personnel board.
Been about 2002, 2003.
Yeah, so
I think that was their second home, wasn't it? First, they were in the little closet next to the veterans office.
that's been a closet for a long time. Anyway, we haven't used it as the building's. It's cold storage now.
Mhm.
We don't have any electricity to it or anything. We haven't used it in decades for anything other than storage. That little teeny office space in the front, again, is used for storage and it's not set up. I mean, the bathrooms aren't necessarily functional. Just by way of my own thoughts to the board, feasibility studies are always helpful in the terms of it lets us get an idea of what we would need to do with it. Just balance that with keeping in mind, while we have storage needs town-wide, we do store some of the equipment for town hall and some records in there. CPA money is there for historic preservation, it's there for feasibility, that's all a feasibility study is. What does the building need? I think
the intent here is to feasibility for
some
keeping
sort
it
of
as a
reuse.
historical-
Preservation,
yeah.
right.
Well, I guess.
My question would just be, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr.
No, go ahead.
Mizuko, but if the application is specific to analyze the conditions of the building and come up with some feasible opportunities for its use, does that prevent the town itself from using the information for using the building for something that's non-historic?
No, not at
A
all.
functional building that can be used for some of the current activities that you are doing now. that-
Correct. You need to think in terms of adaptive reuse. We're not talking I think you're not necessarily saying, certainly it's not going to be a jail, right? We're not going to restore it to being a jail. To preserve the building, what would need to be done with some other use in there? Maybe it becomes a meeting space, maybe it becomes office space, maybe it becomes our archives building. You would look at all those things, but it wouldn't be preserving it just to let it sit there to continue to do cold storage. I mean, we can do that easier and cheaper. The idea would be, well, what else could you use this building for with the context of preserving it? We did something similar with the Morse House, which I know can be a sore subject at times, but we went through a process where we did some feasibility. What work does the building need? What are the possible uses? Obviously there we sort of settled on what it gets used now. I would assume or would recommend that if you did go forward in the process, again, the FinCom and the CPC tell me, we know it, but if the board goes forward, that the feasibility would be, well, what could we use this building for? Well, could we put office staff in there? Okay, once you make ADA enhancements, A, B, and C, you're gonna spend, I'm making numbers up, $1 million to get there.
CPC money isn't supposed to be used for anything but historic preservation.
Well, but that's how you engage in historic preservation.
No, you're trying to get around it and use it for your own study. No.
No, I disagree with that because you're taking into context that it's a historic building. Otherwise, you wouldn't be preserving it. You wouldn't be using it.
Well, I think that we're sitting in a historic building right now that is being used, so I think does that answer the question, that we do have the ability to do that?
Correct, although this building is still being used for its intended original purpose.
Yes. Ms. Eskel, it's not a public meeting, but I am going to allow you to, because I know you made the effort to be here, so you're welcome to speak, if you will.
I really, thank you very much, I really appreciate that. And our chairperson, Judith Howard, I regretfully couldn't be here tonight, but it was her understanding that it was suggested that one of us be here in case there were questions. So in terms of the lockup, which I know looks like a very humble building, it actually was the very first public building, municipally public building built in Norwood after our incorporation. You're accurate. It was built before Town Hall. So it is the first public building ever built in Norwood after Norwood's incorporation. So that itself makes it a landmark. I didn't copy the whole thing because it's over 40 pages. But as you know, the Norwood Memorial Hall and the Town Hall is our only building on the National Historic Register. But in fact, it is the whole property. And that includes the jail and the cannon. And you compromise the integrity of the National Park Service National Registration of this building by doing anything detrimental to that building. I want to read to you what's said about the lockup. And this is from the National Historic Registration document. The second historically significant building on the Town Hall's parcel is a small stucco-covered jail, or lockup, constructed between 1875 and 1888 at the northwest corner of the property. Utilized as a jail until as late as the 1960s, this diminutive structure currently serves as a town garage and storage facility. Mind you, this is written in 1996, because that's when the building was registered. It is fair to say that structures of this age, scale, and original usage are not in existence in great numbers in Massachusetts. It's a rare example of a Victorian-era penal facility. Norwood Center's lockup lends further historical interest to this property. So when this property was approved for national registration, it included as two contributing factors, two buildings, the town hall and the lockup, and one object, which is the World War I cannon. So I know it's humble and it doesn't look fancy, but many very important historical structures are not fancy. And the lockup has a very unique history and should really have there should be a big plaque on it. And this building in regards to what went into the building and the stories, and the National Historical Society has great stories, accurate, attached to the lockup, and that are extremely amusing to read. And there's a lot of interest actually in rejuvenating this building and rehabilitating it to something that is more purposeful, and that is allowed with a historic building, the same as this rightly said is being used in the 21st century. That there are certain ways that you're supposed to, Department of Interior standards and all that, but certainly the lockup should be respected and preserved, and there is a lot of interest. This is a pre-application application process, so there wasn't a whole lot of backup. It could be a lot more backup material in a fuller application, but I just want to make you aware that doing anything negative to the lockup really flies in the face of the authenticity of the National Historic Registration of the only building you have in Norwood, this town hall. And I wanted you to know that. And this is a very small excerpt because it was too much for me to print at home. But you know, you can keep this copy, and it shows you that there's two buildings, and then there's a short narrative, you know, on the lockup. So I just wanted you to have that information, that the building is actually of great value, and it was part of the input for the National Registration, and this was recorded by the Park Service September 13th, 1996. So I felt before you made any further judgment on it that you should be reminded of that, and I appreciate the opportunities.
If you leave that at the table, we'll make sure Ms. Woodward will.
Yeah, and like I say, it's a very long
Sure.
paperwork, but that was the crux of it. So.
All right, is there any further discussion? Mr. Sapp?
Okay.
Ms. Grove first, thank you, Mike. Ms. Grove first.
I'm actually in favor of, some of our sort of, I'll call them odd buildings, where we have a building and we're like, well, it's there, but what do we want to do with it? And for me, I'd like us to get in the habit of some of these types of things, having studies to understand, let's say that we don't want to do anything with it way down the road, what's its sort of putting it to bed plan if you go that route, and understanding what would that cost us. Like, we can't just kind of let them sit and go to the elements. We should have a plan, and so I think it's worth the effort to figure out what's the plan. If we do find that it's useful for something like, you know, refurbish it, turn it into a community space, or turn it into extra overflow meeting space, or revamp the storage of documents, or whatever we feel like doing there, understanding what all our options are, including, well, maybe it's not feasible to do any of that, like getting that for sure, and so that way we can be making smart decisions further down the road.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. Mr. Sapp?
I guess it's kind of new to me because I was never in that prison or jail, but.
That's a good thing.
It makes, I was just thinking it'd be a great, we get the sidebar, side door cafe, we can have the jailhouse.
Town hall coffee shop.
We
Now
can have a lot of good stuff for next to town hall. But I'm just thinking, as Ms. Grove is that, you know, maybe we get a small subcommittee together and just say, what can we do with it? I don't know what's stored in there, Matt, I have no idea, but, you know, maybe we can use it accessory, a building, for the building department, meetings, or anything for this, if we're doing renovations here, it's right next door, so it would just make sense to not spend the money, I guess, today on this $35,000, because I'm the person that let's go do it and just take care of it, and it's gonna be $50,000 and just do it, but, it may have some merit, as Ms. Esco says, about being on the register of two buildings on one lot, and it's got one historical value to the town or the area, but second, it's got beneficial to the community of what we can do with it. Are we gonna rip it down? Are we gonna do this? Are we gonna do that? You know, this should be an exploratory committee or an advisory committee to look at the best possibility, and it's been there for almost 100 years. I don't think another 6 months will hurt us to wait. And I think, you know, as Mr. Plasko says, it's not something we wanna go throw $4 million at, but, you know, if it's something where we could get some, a group in of volunteers or some people to help, you know, remodel or do something with it, it's an option, that's all.
Okay.
Motion tonight, so we can move along.
There is a motion to deny on the table.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lane. On the motion to deny, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
All right, so at this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
How'd you vote?
You
I
voted,
vote to keep it going.
keep it
ball
going. So
going.
you voted and go forward with the application, which would go to the
You're supporting the
CCC.
application?
Well, I think we should support the program, not the 35,000.
Okay, but
That's
the
not what
vote,
you're doing.
the vote's
Yeah.
gonna be for denying the application if it was, so we'll return to Mr. Plasko's original motion. So the motion is to deny the application for $35,000 for the Board of Selectmen to support the motion, to send it to the CPC for consideration at the cost that the application lists, which is $35,000. So I think that might be a little different, Mr. Sad, than what you have described.
My
but-
intent, yeah.
Okay. So your intent, as I understand it, would be you see there's merit to doing some study on the building, but perhaps not through the process of the $35,000 CPC.
Yeah, waiting some timetable.
So,
Then you would vote with mine, and later on
Yeah.
promote doing something.
All right.
okay. So, the board, Mr. Plasko, was it appropriate for you to restate your motion?
A very simple motion to deny the
Motion
application.
to deny?
Second.
Mr. Lane seconds. All in favor of motion to deny?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
It's 3-2 on denial. Ms. Woodward? Okay. Why don't we go through the next one now? This is I picked out the Norwood Pumping Station. This is, well, you see the verbiage in there. Ultimately, the pre-application estimates that there is a $60,000 CPC request. And the Information Historic Society is to use that money to conduct a feasibility study to include a review of the exterior, interior, and accessibility, electricity, and other site improvements. On this particular, any discussion on the pumping station?
I would start, if I might, with, I'm opposed to it. You know I'm opposed to it. I've said that the only money we should be raising for this building is to tear it down in the past. And we've gone through a process of people have gone down and viewed it to see for themselves just what condition it's in. And it's basically been put off limits because of its condition. But I have a question on the particular application. The last one that we just denied did have a letter with someone who proposed doing the study work for $24,000. Where do we come up with the $60,000? How valuable is that $60,000? What's it based on? It's a lot more building, a lot more involved if we were gonna pursue keeping it. It doesn't seem like if the 24 is right, the 60 is right.
I mean, if you were strictly looking at maybe just, here's the challenge with an existing conditions study for that building. If you were looking at it as just a shell of a building, what would need to happen for electricity to work and, you know, walls, windows, and roof to work? As a building shell, you could probably get that done for $60,000. The problem is, it's not, and for anyone who's visited it will understand this, it's not a regular building. From the outside, it looks like it's just a nice brick building. You know, there's a giant 15-foot cistern in it that connects to the cisterns under the property. There's, the old pump room is large pumps, I mean, bigger than this table, equipment and pump room. So it's not just an office building, it's just how it looks from the outside. So once you start factoring in, are you even looking at that stuff? Yeah, the cost is gonna go through the roof. If you were looking at a study just to seal up the walls and the roof, sure, you can get an engineering firm or an architect out there to say, all right, you're.
That's not what they're looking for.
I'm just sort of commenting on
They're looking for exterior and interior.
dollar amounts. I mean, the interior, anything beyond a bare minimum. And again, the problem is, when we look at existing conditions, it's usually an architectural firm or an engineering firm analyzing the building, telling you what's needed for a certain use. And if it's just to bring it back to public use or to bring something up to code, but that building's a pumping station, it's not gonna be that way. If you're looking at a comprehensive, let's get rid of everything that's related in there to actual water treatment, which it's never gonna be a water treatment plant again. That'll never happen, I can guarantee you that. And restore the building to
That was
some
the
use,
problem I had.
you're probably gonna need a lot more money than that to be able to do anything. And finally, because Mr. Plasko and I have been having this battle for close to a decade now, the only reason we haven't proposed any sort of just tear it down and get rid of it, I think that would probably be $10 million, honestly, to just even do that. The building is not, as I said, it's not just a brick office building the way it looks from the outside. The amount of concrete and metal and who knows what chemicals, and it's actually built on massive cisterns that used to hold our water system. It's not just a little brick building that we can go in and rip out the asbestos and anything else that's chemicals and tear it down and get rid of it. It's not going to go easily. I honestly think, I believe Ms. Groh uses the phrase "let nature take it back" is the approach that I would take, only given that tearing it down is incredibly millions and millions and millions of dollars.
The manager's comment that it's more than this to restore it as a pumping station's correct. his numbers and everything else are make-believe.
Just by restoring it as a water source, the work needed on it, we have a report from 1980 that it was $5 to $7 million in 1980. We would never go back to using this as a water source again.
I don't think anyone's ever
you know.
proposed that either.
Yeah,
So I don't
just-
know why we're talking about it. if we
just
haven't even
for-
proposed it.
For the context of the discussion,
Yeah, no
it's
one's
not a
even-
proposal,
no
it's
one's
just
even
a.
proposed that. So as I said, I'm opposed, and anyone who's considering being in favor, that's your prerogative, but I would think you rethink the value of or the appropriateness of the number.
Any other comments?
You might be.
I'm sorry, Mr. Plasko.
Might be time.
Yes. Ms. Grove.
I am also opposed on this one, having been in the site. You know, I know you sort of flippantly say, you know, let it go to nature. It is of such a construction that I don't think you can even safely do that, because let's say that it continues in its current state where there's 3 corners of the roof in and a tree growing out of the top of it. At some point, if those walls lose structural stability, then what? There's a giant, and I mean giant, deep, dangerous hole in the earth where that building is. So I think it's kind of beyond like how are we going to preserve the outside of it, and just what is our game plan long term? Because yeah, we can just kind of let it keep doing what it's doing, but at some point it's going to be a gaping hole if you do that, and I don't know what our plan around that. Hence my earlier comments. The prior motions that we had considered, you know, with the jailhouse, that's obviously a much more simple structure, but the idea of knowing what do we do in the long term with things once we stop using them for their intended purpose. But with this pumping station, I think the main thing I'm interested in with it, and I don't think the 60K proposal here doesn't sound like what they're seeking, would be to go and reclaim some of the material out of it as like a one-off project, reclaim the mahogany out of it to use in other historic purposes, find some of the nice condition bricks to pull out to, you know, bring to other places, but trying to restore it where it's at. I'm not in favor of it from its positioning on Route 1. It'd be kind of a distraction to try to draw more attention to it on that stretch of the road, and it's right against the wetlands, so why wouldn't we want to let the wetlands be sort of, you know, I don't have a good word to wrap that statement up, but essentially, we can't turn it into something in its so close proximity of the wetlands. So I'd be opposed to this one.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. Any other comment? Mr. Lane?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be opposed as well, or am opposed, for similar reasons to Mr. Plasko and Ms. Grove. And I think also, you know, with the location of where it is, I just don't think it's an attraction. I mean, you know, presumably, if it were to be developed into some kind of preservation or museum or something about water history.
The location is terrible.
Yeah,
and at least you could argue the jail is downtown.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but it's the reality of it. So, I mean, I think 99% of our town does not know it's there. And it's mostly because it doesn't serve a function. And so I just don't think it's a good use of funds. Opposed.
Thank you. Mr. Sad?
I think, I'm not sure, do you know how many acres are down there that are good acres on Route 1?
There's very little buildable land. We have, I mean, you have the wellhead protection area, you have wetlands, and it all sort of intermingles. That's not a whole lot of easily buildable land down there. I know every now and then I get somebody that will reach out to me and say, oh, you know, can you sell us the land where the old pumping station is? And it's like, sure, but you can't build anything there, so cut the check for $10 million, it becomes your problem. There's very little usable land. That land actually goes, when it goes further down and it goes to, I think, University Ave, there's a teeny piece of land that one of the commercial clients there wants to buy or lease from the town, and it's totally useless land to us, but it just touches that wellhead protection area, and the amount of complexity for, you know, parking 20 cars to just be able to allow someone to do it is not worth it, given that the land is just not, it's not land we could just turn around and sell. Even if you got rid of the wellhead protection, the well set, if you did all of that, where it is close to the wetlands and everything, it's just not, there's really next to nothing you could build there. We couldn't build what we have there today if we bought that land today and that stuff wasn't already there.
I guess my point is on that property too, there's gotta be some type of advisory group that's set up that can look at all these abandoned or unusable lots and lands and public things that we have and see what we can do with them, and if, you know, it's refurbish them or tank them or just demolish them. You know, we gotta do something with them. We just can't leave it with a hole in the roof.
I would disagree. We do nothing with it. I mean, it's millions of dollars any direction you go down. and I want to make sure you understand that, Mr. Sad, I know you're always looking to make sure you save a dime.
10 cents.
Whatever we do is millions of dollars there. In what world is doing anything there remotely a priority? I just, with all of our capital needs, with all of our historic preservation needs, other than I agree, Ms. Grove's a great idea, can we save, there's a small mahogany office in there, maybe we can look at an application to pull that out, install it in another building somewhere, maybe the office is at the middle school, that would be really cool, that's historic preservation. Anything we start doing at that building, you are looking at millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it is just, I'll never see it on a priority list for the town, ever.
Very well.
All right, next.
Everybody has had an opportunity to comment. Ms. Asker, do you have anything to add, or do we?
Oh, I have to admit, I visited the building myself, and I have to admit, as a taxpayer, I was appalled at its condition. The housekeeping's not too good in that building. And it's obvious that we need storage space because it's just full of stuff. I also agree, however, or disagree with letting it just sit there and rot. And to Mrs. Grove's point, there is gorgeous woodwork in there. There's a lot of it, actually. And the woodwork should not be allowed to rot. And the yellow bricks also are beautiful. And it certainly was not our intention to have it be an old-fashioned pumping station again. But as a commission, it is our job to advocate for the town's public buildings, any that might be especially of a historic nature. And although it was designed by the water engineer at the time, it has great handprints of William G. Upham, and that's one of the main focuses. He was asked to beautify the building, even though it was a building of just utility for water. The town always had, decades ago, just grand ideas about how Norwich should look, even in a water pumping building. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if at least it could look nicer? And yes, it is in a water district, in a resource area, but gardens probably would not be out of the question. Couldn't the area be landscaped a little nicer? Could you have giant 02062 on there? It is on the northeastern part, the gateway. When this town did a huge Route 1 corridor study, it talked about formalizing a branding for the Route 1, and that it's not just the auto mile. I read a really good economic impact report that was written actually by Joe Collins when he first came here, and Route 1 is so much more than just an auto mile. And it talked about providing some decorative and aesthetically pleasing decor on Route 1 to also attract other kinds of businesses, because we're not just the auto mile. Lots of money is made by many other very well-established buildings besides hotels, pharmaceuticals. And in that study, it mentioned landscaping, it mentioned monuments, it mentioned, you could put another water fountain, something attractive there. There are thousands, actually the ACEC, the Area of Critical Environmental Concern, actually includes thousands of acres. Norwood and Canton has the most of it. But it's still good land. You shouldn't put any more concrete on it or put any more buildings on it, but it's empty. It's empty. And it could be far more aesthetically pleasing, maybe with a professional architect, a landscape architect. It's the exterior of the pumping station, if you get all the vines off it and finally see the brick again, and it had a rehabbed roof, actually still has beauty to it. Put the glass back in it, but the inside, the wood should not, in all good conscience, should not be allowed. And it's amazing how good the condition of it is still.
So we need to proceed in what's before us today. I think this has been a good discussion.
It is.
And either way, you've got a good discussion going. Whether this is an up or down vote, there seems to be some ideas generated in any event if it doesn't go forward. But thank you, Ms. Yasko.
Sure.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Do we have a second? Ms. Groh? All in favor of the motion to deny?
Aye.
Unanimous. One more. St. Gabriel's Chapel, submitted by the Historical Commission. This is a pre-application CPC application for $24,000. Site inspection, research documentation submittal for a complete National Register of Historic places application to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Discussion by the board?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lane.
I would be in support of this. I think it's a good use of funds. I think it's sort of the bookend of the project. I think there was a substantial investment in the building, and this makes a lot of sense to me, and I would be a yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Second.
Ms. Grow, any comment?
I was also in favor of this one, that, like I said, the past what we've done on it, and, you know, the community, encouraging people to come and look at it, sometimes we get inside of it as well. And so this seems reasonable to me.
Thank you.
I was just going to add one thing, I'm sorry. And I know in the cover letter, and this is someone that the town has worked with before, I think it would just be helpful, maybe for the full application, if there was sort of a breakout of maybe the hours and just a little more detail on that $24,000 cost estimate, which I don't doubt is accurate. It's just a little more detail might be helpful for people to see.
CPC, you mean?
Yeah.
You're probably going to require that, if I recall from the CPC, that you want some substance to it.
Yeah, and it probably does exist, so that,
Right.
yeah. I just didn't see it in part of our packet.
Yes, sir. All right. Mr. Sad, any further comment?
Same as our colleagues, I support it 100% and knock it out.
Any others? Mr. Plasko, anything in this particular application?
Ditto.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Seconded by Ms. Grow. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Good job.
Thank you for leaving that.
We'll take care of it. Okay, great.
Two buildings, one object, and this page tells you about the lockup.
Awesome. Thank you. It's not going anywhere.
A walk-up grill.
We'll walk up grill. We'll walk up gap.
All right, we are on to item 3.11, special town meeting warrant. And adjacent to that, we have 3.12, special town meeting yellow sheet. The purpose of the separation is that the 3.11 special town meeting warrant is for our discussion and signature. And 3.12 is special town meeting yellow sheet for discussion and vote of the board for any warrant article that is approved under 3.11. Mr. Mizuko, is there any, what's the pleasure of the board? Shall we go through the articles one by one quickly?
Mr. Excuse me. It's certainly the board's discretion. I think we can go through expeditiously. If we go by one, the board can first decide, I mean, sort of, yes, put it on there, and then do you support or oppose? But of course, any questions that you have, I'd be more than happy to answer, and maybe just go one by one. I'll give a quick overview, or just I can name the article since the board has had it.
The board members may want to just, as we're going through them, the warrant, just have their yellow sheet handy as well for discussion points. I'm sure you're going to cover those as you go through.
Sure. You want me to just start and?
Why don't we start with Article 1?
All right, Article 1 is an appropriation for expenses related to implementing body-worn cameras. It's becoming the norm in the Commonwealth for police officers to have body-worn cameras. We were able to receive a grant to offset a significant portion of the cost. We're asking for $180,000 in free cash to cover all of our costs. We did receive $250,000 from the state to offset the total cost of this program.
With all due respect, we've gone over these, and if one of us has a question, we should ask it, otherwise kind of almost like a consent.
I was actually going to suggest the consent agenda. Do we want to, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I've been trying to do consent agenda for years. I can, Article 1, and people can yell hold if they want to come back to it, and then we know what we want to discuss. We can try that.
Otherwise approved to go on, because it's getting away.
Do you want to try that, Mr. Chairman?
It's not the first time we've seen it.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I do think that we're talking about a consent to all.
No, one by one.
Well, yeah,
okay,
if
that's
you want,
fine, 'cause
either you could do it or I could do
There are
it.
a couple that.
Like if there's one I want to discuss, I would say
Yes.
hold, we go back to it.
Yes.
Do you want me to just read through the numbers and you can yell out hold, whichever ones
Yes.
people want to come back
Yeah.
to? All right, Article 1.
Give a little breathing space for a moment.
So Article 1, we know what that is. Do we want to?
Is there a hold on Article 1?
No.
Article 2, appropriation for sidewalk repairs. Mr. Chairman, I think you wanted to hold that to
I do.
possibly pull it. Article 3, transfer to stabilization fund. All right. Article 4, compensated absences fund.
No.
Articles 5 and 6 are together, Capital Stabilization Fund, I assume that's a hold.
Hold.
Article 7 is the capital plan. We'll go forward, everyone can always come back. Article 8 is 20 Vernon Street, I assume that's a
I
hold.
think we should hold and discuss.
Article 9 is a Verizon easement. All right, Article 10 is requesting special legislation to allow police officers working beyond 65 if they didn't work in Norwood. All right, pretty straightforward. Article 11 is the sealer of weights and measures bylaw. This allows us to raise the sealer of weights and measures fees, which have not been raised in decades, and unfortunately, this is the statutorily required way to do it. And Article 12 is the local sales tax for the sale of recreational marijuana, because we have found out, as council alluded, that we are required to, we're not required, but the medical marijuana is going to be able to open to convert to recreational. We can't stop that. We would want to put the tax in to get the revenue.
Excuse me.
Very well. Now we're ready to go back to, what was the first one we had?
Article 2, an appropriation related to sidewalk expenses. And the board may remember this was a request earlier in the year about, are we addressing sidewalks? We said we would put something forward on the warrant. And you can still pull items to the warrant, but Mr. Chairman, I believe you and I spoke and you had a thought on this.
Yeah, the only concern I have with the projects, and I realize that we have talked about this, and that the sidewalks certainly do need an additional appropriation. My first assumption, and perhaps it was a bad assumption on my part, that we would go through the annual advanced pavement program first. We're into our 5th year, complete that, and then we'd focus on sidewalks. So that's one concern. The second concern is that, ultimately we are going to be using free cash. We've already got an approved capital plan, also in the vicinity of $8 million using of free cash. And the sidewalk project is just not on that plan right now. And I just think that the appropriate thing to do, in my mind, would be consider this an idea that has merit, but we hold it for consideration for next year's capital outlay plan, to give the opportunity for all capital projects to be vetted in addition to this one, so that we can do an assessment as to what the priorities of the FY26 projects.
Okay.
So those were my concerns.
If it's certainly up to your discretion with the board's discussion. What I'm hearing you is you want to withdraw the article completely and have us send it through the regular capital process.
That would be my suggestion. Mr. Plasko.
Where do I start with this? I want to see the sidewalk program. Been yelling about it for years. Glad to see we're doing something. In principle, I certainly agree with you that it has not been on the capital outlay plan. And it is a big capital outlay, and particularly if we're talking about it being a multi-year program. So it seems appropriate that it go through that process, which means another year delay that I'm not happy about, but at least we are now addressing it where we seem to have been off for a while. And I wouldn't want the capital outlay committee to say, well, it goes back to year 4, 5, and 6, because it is part of, I think, the capital outlays to change the priorities within that 6-year plan, and that this is one that we would think that to get started is a priority, should go with our endorsement as a priority. So I personally could delay, even though I don't like it. But the next question is I think maybe the manager was just referring to it, you withdraw the whole article, what are we gonna do with this $2 million? It's just delay getting it into the stabilization.
So this $2 million of free cash, it just would be free cash that we won't allocate this town meeting.
Right, but you were trying to get it, you wanted to build up the stabilization by.
Oh, no, so Article 2 and 3 are separate.
So we would, my reading of the articles would be, there are a number of them that we are recommending for free cash allocation. This one, the article for the stabilization fund, the article for the capital stabilization fund, as well as the capital outlay. So, if any of those articles were not to go forward, the free cash that was suggested for the articles would just remain free cash.
Correct. So this isn't money that's already allocated. It's just you're saying, nope, don't spend it on this.
No, they are related.
No. Article 2 is a standalone article asking for a $2 million appropriation. What we've
So it doesn't have to offset something? Last time we.
No,
last
so
time we kind of offset something.
we did with the road paving that's in the capital plan, we're using Forbes money for that to put free cash into stabilization. This is separate from all that,
Just
so that all still
cash into
happens.
stabilization.
Correct.
Okay.
Further questions on Article 2? Or?
Yeah, any other questions on Article 2? I take your point, Mr. Plasko, I think they're well made. You know, obviously, you know, we have had feedback on the sidewalks, and I just feel that there is a process that I think this should go through. And unfortunately, given that process, I'm unwilling to support it as currently written. Mr. Sad?
I yield to your expertise and seniority, so you want to make a motion to withdraw it, or you want to just kill it?
I'll accept a motion to, Mr.
I would say,
what is the proper motion to be made on this?
So the warrant hasn't been, by withdrawing, what you're telling us is the final document that you will sign tonight will no longer have this article on it. So I would move to withdraw the article from the warrant. We will make the adjustments to the warrant, the yellow sheet, et cetera, and just throw in there and direct the manager to add it to next year's capital process. We'll bring something to the board before then. We'll give us some time to do some modeling, but withdraw the article and direct the manager to send this through the capital outlay process.
When you say modeling, you're talking about?
Well, we can look at, do we want to do 1 year of sidewalks, or
Yes.
do we want to look at a 5-year like, if we're going to take some time, what goes to capital outlay, the board will have more time to sort of massage that and look at different
And
options.
to that point, is it possible, not that I think we need to reconsider, no, I'll take it back. I was gonna say that, you know, we could.
Not capital outlay for this year, so this would be for
This would
next
be
year.
okay, yeah. Very well, because the capital outlay does consider some projects in the springtime from the schools mostly, so if there's, but I'm comfortable with the approach of doing the modeling, coming back for the capital outlay plan year 2026, which we will be beginning a year from now.
That's my
So you
motion.
made a motion to withdraw.
Yep.
Do we have a second? It's been, you get that, Kristen? Mr.
I'll get you the language. The
Second.
motion is to withdraw the article and direct the manager to add it to the capital plan.
Got that, I just,
All right.
who's second?
Matt.
Matt,
Mr.
second.
Lane.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous.
All right, Article 3, there was no hold. Article 4, there was no hold. Articles 5 and 6, establishing a capital stabilization fund and appropriating $5 million into that fund. This is a request from the Finance Commission. Mr. Donnelly and I have spoken about working with a group of himself, me, and 1 or 2 other town staff, as well as somebody from the FinCom and the school committee, to figure out what that dollar amount in Article 6 would go towards or how it would be used. But other than that, what's before the board is the establish the fund in Article 5 and then to fund it with $5 million in Article 6.
Any discussion regarding Article 5?
I believe 5 and 6 should be withdrawn. I think they need more work. I think there's no necessity for it to happen immediately, particularly setting up a capital outlay plan for capital items, thinking about the fact that we're going to have large future, they're going to be there in the future. And I think we need more time to clearly be discussing what money, how much money, where it's coming from, should go into that stabilization fund. And I just don't think it's all that practical, or almost a revisit of the stormwater discussion at town meeting. That we asked town meeting to set something up, even though they, again, get to vote on how much goes into it, without talking about what our plans are, what our thoughts are. I think we have one discussion on the whole thing and bring it back in the spring. No need to rush for it now. I note that we have a lot of free cash at the moment, but we have a lot of needs also. And we're spending a lot of it at this town meeting, presumably if town meeting approves. But we also have the potential of really significant balance left over from the middle school program. And we should get a better handle on that, and shouldn't be using up some of our current free cash for capital items, because that money can only be used for capital items. So we should wait and see what that amount of money is and put that towards a fund like this, not be using other monies. and to use the other monies, the other current free cash, and that, it's gonna be just way too much with all the needs we have. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm saying we shouldn't do it now. We should hold it for springtime, and give us more time to talk with the CFO and see how that project's going, what kind of balance it might be, and plan intelligently instead of just because we like the idea.
Ms. Grove?
Thank you. Further question, sort of dovetailing off of that comment. Are there any downstream consequences for us punting to the spring?
No, assuming we still have the free cash available, we wouldn't be putting money in November or late October and then taking it out between now and then, between now and May. So we're still going to earn interest on the money. It's still real cash that we have on hand. It actually, I mean, waiting always increases your financial flexibility because free cash is the most flexible money that we have. Once we put money into capital stabilization with a plan, we're only going to draw it down from that plan. And to a certain extent, to Mr. Plasko's point, we would want to make sure we showed rating agencies, hey, we did put $5 million aside for known needs. There's a value to saving free cash. That being said, if we don't spend free cash, it doesn't disappear. I always say free cash dies on June 30th. They recertify the number, but if we simply don't spend it, it doesn't go away.
I think my question was more to the point of, when we talked about the stormwater, we sort of saw the length of the tent pole, as it were, for how many downstream steps were sort of depending on that decision. And do we have anything like that?
Not for this. So let's say, what my proposal would probably be is let's put the money aside knowing for things we're going to have to buy in the next 5 years. We have generators that are up. We have fire engines that are up. We wouldn't be buying any of them until next October, November anyway. So it's not going to impact us negatively to wait until May to see, okay, what do we have left?
Mhm.
What are we going? There is a benefit, as much as I think there's value to doing this, there is a benefit to wait until we get through the budget process. We know we're going to have to plug something in the budget. We got to see where state aid's going to be, where our numbers come through. This historic amount of free cash we're going to have is not going to recur. So it's always a balance. We don't want to use one-time money to offset the budget, but hey, we got to operate, we got to pay people and whatnot. So I don't see any downstream negative impacts by waiting because we otherwise wouldn't be doing anything with it.
No further questions.
Mr. Lane?
Thank you. And I agree with Mr. Plasko's point and hearing Mr. Mizuko say there's not really a downside to waiting. I think, getting some more information maybe. Additionally, I know the Budget Balancing Committee is going to meet soon, so I think incorporating that into the conversation, Mr. Plasko, is probably a good idea, this concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives us some more time to dig into it, so.
Well, I'm going to agree and disagree.
Agree to disagree?
I actually split the articles here. I'm on Article 5. This is a suggestion that's come out of the Finance Commission, and I do believe that it's prudent for us to allow the article to go forward to vote to establish a fund and present to town meeting the rationale for doing that. I understand that there's work to be done there, Mr. Mizuko has referenced earlier. I would like to see the fund go, the town meeting have an opportunity to hear about the establishment of the fund, what it would accomplish. The FinCom has voted to ask us to put this on the special town meeting, so in deference to them, I'm supporting them. But I also think it has some really good merits that we jointly, a working group with the FinCom as well as the school department perhaps, and Board of Selectmen. Article 6, I am a little nervous about that. I think that I would agree would be something that, particularly the dollar amount that's suggested for Article 6, Mr. Mizuko, is how much?
$5 million.
$5 million. See, I think if we're going to dedicate $5 million worth of free cash now, it makes me a little nervous. To the points made earlier, I think that amount of money makes me nervous because I think we haven't gone through budget balancing process. I think that if we were to approve the article going forward in Article 5 and get accepted by town meeting, then I think the work to be done during BBC would be looking at our finances to find out what would be the mechanisms financially that we could, through the budget balancing process, be able to fund it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is free cash. I don't know. Maybe it's another revenue source. So I would be in favor of Article 5 going forward for consideration at town meeting And I would vote to withdraw Article 6 at this time and wait till May to consider that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that, I would agree with you that I think that's a smart move. To Mr. Plasko's concern about if town meeting says, well, we're establishing a fund, but we don't know what we're putting in, we may have a recommendation by town meeting. We may not want to pull the lever on that recommendation until May because we want to get through budget balancing and we won't be there. So we may be able, it may be sort of last minute, October 24th at town meeting, say, well, if things look good, this is how we want to do it. We're waiting to get through the budget process and then we'll make that recommendation in May. Now, somebody might say, why not just do it in November? We're not going to be sure. We think we'll get our free cash number. We think we're going to spend $7 million. I'm making the number up, and then we're going to need $7 million to balance the budget. So we'll know in May. The money will still be there. We don't lose it. It just might be more prudent to take up Article 6 in May. But I think we can address the concern of town meeting of, well, you're asking us to establish a fund. We don't know what's going to happen. This is the plan to happen. Now, they could say, we'll just wait. Well, one step at a time, and we'll if state aid is great and we don't need as much money in the budget and something else materializes, well, maybe we're putting $7 million in, maybe we're putting $9 million in. Maybe it's only $2.5 million and it's just paying for the next 2 years' capital projects.
I respectfully disagree. You don't set up something you don't have a need for. At the moment, we don't have a need for it. If we're gonna wait to decide what's the proper amount to put in it, that's when you put it in. You put an article to establish a stabilization fund for this purpose. Someone at town meeting could get up and amend that to also include an appropriation to it. That would be within the scope of that article. That would be appropriate. Courts have ruled on the liberal interpretation of cases like that. There's examples of that. So I don't think we should be going anywhere near it until we're ready to deal with it. And I just think it sounds silly to set up something that you're not going forward. Not that we're not going forward, that's the wrong word. That gives the wrong signal, but not ready to at this time commit to what we think is proper to go in there for the purpose we're setting it up for. So I think we wait. What's the harm in waiting?
To Mr. Plasko's point, it is the selectmen's warrant. If you say we want to do this, we just want to wait until May, that is also your prerogative. We'll probably have a land use town meeting in March, but as you know, we're trying to keep March just land use.
Oh, move it along. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna agree with Mr. Plasko. He's got many more years on this board than I do, so I kind of go with his idea of wait and see what happens and then figure it out at the end.
Well, I think we've all kind of got our input regarding Article 5 and 6 on the table. So starting with Article 5, I will take a motion on Article 5.
Move to withdraw.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed.
I think you made very good points.
Yeah.
You made a valiant effort, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Commission.
I think it's probably a moot point at this point, but Article 6
is moved by default. Now, just to make sure, we're going to work on it, but we'll see this again in May on the warrant, correct?
I think that is.
Should we make
that's
that a part of the
everyone's
motion, or you don't need to?
He made a motion to withdraw. You seconded it, Mr.
Yeah.
Lane? So the motion is made by Mr. Plasko, seconded by Mr. Lane to withdraw Article 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right. Article 7 was the capital plan. Nobody wanted to hold. We beat that one quite a bit.
No, did we say hold it?
We didn't.
No, the next one that was held was Article 8, Vernon Street.
I'd say on the capital plan, as you know, there's maybe two items I don't necessarily agree with, but it's not what the majority still favors it, so let's move forward.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Plasko. On Article 8, this is the Vernon Street project. We heard earlier from the CPC. I'll personally just put up my 2 cents at this point. If there's further work to be done to their earlier point regarding further documentation regarding the grant agreement and changes to that, enhancements to that it may be wise for this board to wait until that information is available, which I believe they cited as October 7th. But that's my viewpoint. But any further discussion, have at it.
If I could be clear, Mr. Chairman, just so everyone, you're recommending the board The article is a CPA article, so the article itself is gonna go forward, but that the board,
We reconvene to vote once the documentation is, in other words, I think we have the opportunity on the 8th, given the timeline that was described, assuming that the documentation comes as they're presenting to the FinCom on their meeting on the 10th,
And if not, we
why
make the
can't we
vote on
get
the
the
same
information
amount
on
of
the
information.
8th?
And if
So-
not, we make the vote on the same amount of information we have tonight.
Right,
Yeah, I think so.
we postpone the vote.
Okay, I guess for the purposes of the yellow sheet, what we would put is that the Board of Selectmen will render their opinion on this article prior to or at town meeting.
That would be.
Right, because that's what
that would-
FinCom's doing the same
Yeah,
thing.
that would be.
Perfect.
Okay.
So to that, with that information, do I have a motion to postpone this article for discussion until our October 8th?
No, you want a motion to insert it? on
Yeah, the
warrant
article itself is
To
going.
insert it, right, okay.
With no
and
action.
to withhold our position.
Withhold the position, thank you.
Yeah.
It's getting late in the night here.
It is.
All right. Insert, but hold on position vote.
I make that motion.
That's been made.
Yep.
Second.
Mr. Lane seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is unanimous.
All right. There were
We have
no
any
other
others?
articles that the board wanted to hold, so should we assume that, I believe that means everything on the warrant that stayed in is a 5-0 to support. The exception being Article 8, the board will render their opinion before or
On
at
or
town
before,
meeting.
Yep.
Yes.
Is that correct? Everyone understands that? So all the other articles will say that are going forward, the Board of Selectmen voted 5-0 to support.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, that is the yellow sheet.
And you're amending the warrant itself.
Yeah, we'll do some work first in the morning. My guess is Mr. Rosen is already at home furiously working on making the last minute changes, but we like to keep him busy. That's when he does his best work.
All right. If that completes our work on the town meeting warrant, I believe. Moving on to the agenda, and we're almost to the end. Yay. Okay, a general manager, performance review for FY '24. Give me a moment while I get my ducks lined up here. In spite of the fact that I'm bringing a laptop to this meeting every week, I find I still like to have my paper copies.
Yeah, get rid of it.
I'm going to read into the record information regarding the work that the board has done with Mr. Mizuko in regards to the FY24 performance review plan, which the board adopted back in May of this year. So this evening, I'd like to present a summary of the board's consensus review of the general manager's FY24 performance review. In May of this year, the board adopted a process for reviewing the general manager's overall performance for FY24, consisting of a series of goals and objectives established by the manager and a series of key competencies that, in the board's view, are important for carrying out the responsibilities of the position. The general manager submitted 17 goals and objectives for FY24 for the board's review, and the manager provided commentary on each of those to describe their status. Input received from the board concluded that 9 goals and objectives achieved a consensus rating of meets, and 7 goals and objectives achieved a rating of significant progress. Overall, the board recognizes that the FY24 goals established by the manager were accomplished, or that he made progress towards achieving them. In addition to using goals and objectives when evaluating FY24 performance, the board determined that an important part of the process is to provide feedback to the manager regarding how the manager attains results. The board identified several performance competencies to use in this FY24 review, and these competencies represent many of the skills and abilities the board believes are needed for the role of general manager. Based on input received from the members, the consensus of the board on performance competencies demonstrate that the general manager has strong skills and competencies in many areas, including relationships with commissions and committees and the community, planning and organization, budget preparation and management, and judgment and decision-making. The board also understands that the manager could benefit from improving his competencies in other areas, especially those related to communications with the board and managing conflict. The board commits to working to establish goals and objectives for use in FY25 performance review process. Since this process, and this is important, since this process is new to Norwood, FY24 goals and objectives were not formally established using the more collaborative approach suggested for FY25. Additionally, the board commits to working with the manager to develop and improve those competency areas identified in the review as needing improvement or needing further development. And the performance review process demonstrates that the board is committed to assisting Mr. Mizuko in performing the role of general manager. The performance review process is designed to help ensure that both the board and the manager are working effectively in their respective positions to deliver quality town services to Norwood residents. That's my report on the review, and I do want to take the opportunity to thank the board members for providing their insights and input, and for Mr. Mizuko for also providing us with detail and being open to our feedback in many discussions. So I appreciate the work everyone's doing. And I'll entertain any further commentary from folks. Seeing none, we'll move on to the addenda. Ms. Grow, we'll start from the left side.
Oh, not filing memorandum?
I think we took care of memorandum.
Memorandum we took care of. I read the only memorandum was the clerk's notice.
You were correct, sorry.
I threw you off there.
You did.
Yeah, we get a little out of order. We're all discombobulated.
So only small update from my end is I was able to confirm that both the state rep and the senator reached out to the MBTA about the bus route. Gave them basically verbatim the data that we had provided, so big thanks there. But in the event that we don't see further traction, my thought is to do some more face-to-face lobbying. If I do that, what I'd be looking for from the manager is a recommendation for who among the staff would I want to take with me. That would basically what I'm seeking is somebody that can really rattle off the stats off the top of their head type of thing. Doesn't have to be tonight. You can catch up with me later about a recommendation.
We just on that, it's already showing effect. We staff had a meeting with the MBTA last week, and they're already starting to backtrack on what they said what some of the changes would be. So I think this is a case where we have to have that regular advocacy with them. Otherwise, it's going to go unnoticed. I got a email from a reporter who said, "Can you respond to the MBTA saying, that it's still very early in the process and they don't think that the changes are going to be, that significant." Well, they were as of a couple months ago, and now they're backtracking. There was also information about Dedham, which I said, fascinating information. Not concerned about Dedham or Norwood, but so great work already. It's already showing results, and I'll get you in touch with staff. We'll put together a little working group.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Plasko? Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Plasko?
I think just one with the lateness of the hour. Today we celebrated our NCM, our local cable provider. Now, community media has celebrated their 20th anniversary in existence and in serving the community. I just want to congratulate them and actually thank them also for the fine job they do in serving the community. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Plasko. Mr. Lane?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Sad?
A couple little things. I want to congratulate the field hockey team, undefeated. Coach Dolan is doing a great job. Great first half for Coach Manny Lopes the other day and his staff and the team. Just didn't pull it off. But Austin Reardon, they're having a fundraiser, 5K road race on the October 13th at 10 a.m. If you could just register online at ar5kroadrace@gmail.com. It's a great cause. Great young man that's passed away, and we appreciate it. And it's just something that Norwood does all the time to support their people, residents. But that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Mizuko, my apologies. I did skip your manager's update, so you're welcome.
I was not going to say anything because given the latest hour. Just very quickly, the fence is starting to go up at Old Parish. Please check it out if you have a chance. We're hoping in the next couple of weeks. The gates are going to be up, so it's looking fantastic. Take a look at Memorial Hall. Maybe not tonight because the alarm's going to set soon, but the benches are done. They're not back yet. We rarely get to see Memorial Hall open. The benches are finished ahead of time. We're holding them at the contractor until after the election because it'll just be easier to not have to move them around. But it'll be great to see the refurbished benches when they come in, probably a couple days after Election Day. But if you're walking through Memorial Hall, we rarely get to see it empty. The facility's been doing a great job. They're polishing the wood. They're shellacking the floor. They're really putting some effort into it, so it looks good.
What about the walls? With some painting and chipping?
A couple of other things. They're not going to do major work, but they're doing some of the cleanup work and the maintenance work while we have the benches. We somehow at some point going to look at the the plaster and everything and make sure it is. And I had sent, I believe, the board,
wall is empty.
we got some images of the coat of arms that are up on the beams in
Yes.
there that we had never really seen up close before, at least not recently.
Unless you were very tall, you would not have seen those.
Correct. We're curious if there's anything on them there isn't. And then the bids should be in soon for the downtown intersection project. As you know, the last couple months we were doing borings and testings and a few other things, so.
I could not get around the town of Norwood today.
Today was a tough day.
It was
an
really-
obstacle course.
Somebody's gonna coordinate that somehow.
Sometimes it just happens that I'll.
God. Particularly downtown area.
Yeah.
From the ward up.
Yeah, I had a
was tough. It was
50%
tough.
increase in my commute, went from 6 minutes to like 9.
Thank you, Mr. Mizuko. The only update I'll have is, so we did receive the donation from the Bach Fund from the several weeks ago, and I want to announce that Bach Fund applications are available now on the town's website. We have established a submission deadline of October the 11th, and I am planning on scheduling the approvals of the applications for the October 22nd meeting. If that works for the board, we'll go forward with that, and we'll have an update on the 22nd. And I will now entertain a motion finally to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Plasko made, Mr. Lane made the motion, Ms. Gross seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, it's unanimous. Thank you. Good night, everyone.